I
But
wanted to go.
The Hilton in Tokyo, it's amazing.
I wanted to do the Amman one, which is like the more traditional one, but it was like all booked out. I just like last minute booking, like a week before the trip. Was like fuck it, just bought tickets and stuff. So
Amman is a hotel?
yeah. It's like a more traditional Japanese hotel,
Oh,
but yeah, shit's wild, man.
like a ryokan? What's the name
I
of
think, but
that?
it's supposed to be like if you had a ryokan, but you were willing to pay like $15,000 to be there or some
My
shit,
God.
like that kind of shit.
All right.
Um,
Hopefully
shit's wild,
you're
man.
hopefully you have your travel router set up and you're able to help the audience understand
I
how
have
you're
my
connecting,
travel.
because we have some CaptiveCrunch updates today. Hello everyone. This is the Three Body Problem. We're up to episode 111. Episode 111 presented by our friends at TLPBlack and our friends at State of Statecraft, the conference in Brussels. Let's start quickly with TLPBlack. Costin. What do those guys do? Read the ad for me.
We do 111 different things for you, starting with security assessments. We provide threat intelligence, boutique solutions tailored. We also try to combine AI, which is everywhere nowadays, let's be honest, with human intuition. I think this is where the future lies, because AI is super good with big data, but it kind of lacks sometimes a kind of intuition that an experienced analyst has. So this is where we're going with it.
Do you guys do live post incident forensics for companies as well? Like a big company will
Mm.
call TLPBlack and say, "Hey, I think we had a big ransomware infection, or we had something happen, and here's some anomalies. Can you tell us what's happening? Is that a big
We
part of your business?"
we do incident response regularly. I don't think it's a big part of the business, I would say, but it's a very interesting part of the business. I think the kind of insights that you gain from doing incident response, they're awesome. And I think all these years, we were looking at the big companies like Mandiant, like CrowdStrike doing incident response, and writing all these super cool blogs about how they see a specific threat actor across different customers. That kind of insight, I think that you cannot get through telemetry alone. Like telemetry can go up to some point, but when you do incident response, you always recover more traces, more artifacts, at least back in the days, which give you a very interesting understanding of how these threat actors operate, how they typically start with the edge device, with the router. Like in 75% of the cases we did, it started with that. Either a vulnerability, unpatched one, or a 0 day in some cases. And from there, it's kind of game over, sadly. But super interesting.
Are we likely to see independent TLPBlack discoveries and publications like KPT reports? Are you thinking about doing some of that, like your own?
we have several. So we have several of them in the pipe. Just I you know me and you know the guys, and sometimes like
Paleontology takes time.
perfection is the killer
The
of
enemy.
productivity.
They're not quite fully baked, and you're just like, oh, no, I get it.
Yeah, would be nice to have the full picture. Would be nice. Like this reminds me of this famous blog we wrote together on paleontology. If you remember, like sometimes it can take years to pull all the strings of something. It's to understand all the all different aspects, victims, sinkholing, all those things.
Let me bring
We'll
in
see.
Juanito, visiting
What's up?
visiting the podcast this late at night from Tokyo with the city of Tokyo in the background. What's going on, man?
Not much. I'm taking the first vacation in that time I can remember.
Nice.
And everybody bitched me out because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay home. I'm gonna unpack. I'm finally gonna settle into my house. And apparently that's the wrong answer. And there's all these fucking vacation Nazis who just tell me that like I need to travel. So even though like I travel, I'm like global services and shit. Like I travel enough as it is. But I heard the cries of all my good friends, and I decided to take a fairly like emotionally meaningful trip for me, which is to come back to Tokyo, to Japan, which I haven't been in like 20 some years, 27 years. Um, so yeah, I just came out to like shop and eat and hang out and you know, just
What is your travel route to look up, set up? I know I mentioned it at the top, but in all seriousness, it's kind of like a running discussion now around the CaptiveCrunch stuff that was disclosed by,
no.
we had ReliaQuest, Microsoft, Lumen, who else, Costin? I'm missing someone. Google, the guys at Google also
Google,
put out
yeah.
stuff
Oh,
this week. And now there's a big interest again in like, how do I protect myself from this? When you travel, you're going as a, let's assume you think of yourself as a high value individual in a hotel that's probably compromised. What is your flow?
Well, I'm very recently updated my setup. So I was kind of optimizing things for being in the US because we've got this like great services like Calix Institute that will let you get. Now they tend to have a booth at DEF CON, which is extremely convenient because you can basically go and give these guys a donation in cash if you want for $500, and they'll give you a mobile hotspot with an unlimited 5G card, like SIM card. And if you pay for it in cash, like there's basically no registration of whose name it's under.
Is this
But
gray
that
market stuff, or this is like on the up and up?
no, I mean it's some kind of like MVNO kind of like it's under T-Mobile, but essentially there's some kind of like nonprofit and like you give a donation and that makes you like a member and they give you a SIM card. And it's been fucking phenomenal. Like I've been using it for several years. Mostly like it's not for the anonymity of it as much as like having an unlimited hotspot kind of takes away a lot of the disincentives to using it as much as you could and should. And then more recently, I updated, especially for a couple of recent trips and this trip. I got a GLINet Moody 7, following some of Costin's recommendations. And this one, I could pop the Calix Institute SIM card in, and then I got an eSIM with a service. I can't remember the name. I think it's like UBG, which is like a worldwide roaming, unlimited, blah blah. But what's cool about it is you can also set it to have like a Wi-Fi repeater and like do a tunnel by default. And so you basically set up all your devices to just connect to this one thing and then route everything through that one thing and avoid a lot of the perils along the way,
It
right?
sounds like work in the hotel room, though. Is it?
Nah, man, you just plug it into
Just nerd out.
you tell Codex to set it up for you one time, and then you move on.
Costin, there was some conversation in this around this realm around like what is the login flow? When do you log in first? When do you log in section? When does the like potential surveillance start? Can you talk a little bit about like your flow? Like
my
when
flow.
you set up this GLI thing, you get into a room, you set up this GLI thing. What does that look like?
Mhm.
Surveillance starts when you wake up. It's already they put the cameras in the room already.
This is true. This is true. We're all like mitigating something that doesn't exist, right?
By the way, on the topic of SIMs, I'm not dodging the question, but just remember something which is interesting. There's also this eSIM solution from Silent Link, well, which I think you can pay with cryptocurrencies like Magic Money. You can pay with Magic Money to be
Magic.
fully anonymous. It's this solution that was also kind of promoted on X by Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, the original one. So I have several of those as well that I use sometimes. The nice thing is they work everywhere. Yeah, they work everywhere and they never expire. So you load like some credit on them, and then in whatever country you go, they tell you use this provider, or because like this will be the cheapest, or like this other provider. And otherwise, yeah, sure, eSIMs, super useful. You can buy them almost anywhere nowadays. Revolut, which is like super popular around here. I don't know if you guys have it in the States, but like in Europe, everyone uses
Revolut
Revolut.
had like a controversy years and years ago around like this referral engine, that it was like a payments referral engine.
Isn't Revolut basically like the PayPal of Europe? Or Venmo
Like a
or
Venmo,
whatever.
more like the
Right.
Venmo, I think. Which like some of their plans, they give you eSIMs, and Telegram also, by the way, allows you to buy eSIMs nowadays. So there's like a lot of sources, but I also use travel routes sometimes. I use the hotel Wi-Fi, and I remember in Japan it was interesting because in Japan I think there's a public law that says that all Wi-Fi access points in Japan require registration. So you need to register in order to use public Wi-Fi anywhere in Japan, be it like in the cafes, in Starbucks, in your hotel, wherever. So you need to go through that registration phase. So yeah, I mean, in my experience, so whenever you're connecting the first time, right, through the router, you need to disable the VPN. So that is perhaps the moment when things can go bad. Which is me personally, when I do that, I try to authenticate the GLI net from a device that I consider, secure for that purpose, something that is not leaking or is not susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. So once I authenticate, it just stays authenticated based on its Ethernet address, and I can just use it like in my room for forever. I don't have to re-authenticate over and over, and that's also nice if you have more devices. And I typically tunnel through a VPN like Mulvad, which runs on the router itself. So I tunnel the traffic or through my own VPN where I do all the logging. So sometimes it looks like this. There's a router on the Wi-Fi. On top of that, there's something like Mulvad, and on top of that, it's my own VPN that does the out of band tap at home.
You remember when Snowden first started doing talks and he would show up like super fucking grainy? It looked like 128 kilobit per
That's what
second
he was
fucking
doing.
video. It's like
Yes.
6 fucking
Yes.
VPNs, and like everyone
yeah,
knew exactly what building he was sitting in just because he would show up on TV. You're like, cool.
And he was like also a big fan of free Wi-Fi's, right? With the what was it? With the Pringles. He was doing that
Yeah,
with
the
the Pringles, if you
Pringles
remember.
Cantena.
Cantena, yeah.
Yeah,
Oy.
too much, man.
Mhm.
You can always unplug the Ethernet from the back of the TV and
Oh,
plug
yeah.
that into your
That's
GLI
also
net
solid.
router and use that instead.
Raise your hand if you did that. Let us know in the comments if you unplugged the
If you've done this
Ethernet
before.
from your TV in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Before we get to the topics this week, Juanito, tell the people why they should go to the State of Statecraft conference in Brussels in October 20 to 22. These are friends of ours, presenters of the pod. Give them the pitch.
Well, I mean, honestly, at this point, anything Mike Matonis decides to put together is worthwhile. Just as a true connoisseur of all things threat intel and a generally good human being. But also, it's lovely to see.
Skilled as well at this.
Oh,
at this
unbelievable. Winner of Best Speaker at LABScon in the past, and just an overall great person with an amazing ability to track a lot of Russian APTs for a very long time without getting a whole lot of credit for it. But more than that, it's just amazing to go, as much as Ryan might give us a hard time for these TLP conferences, it's really the only place where you're going to go and actually hear what people are genuinely working on, what's still cooking, what there's still opportunity to contribute with and collaborate on, right? Like by the time these things go public, like, it's out, it's burned, it's done. But the true research and collaboration gets to happen in these spaces. So it's awesome to see them go all the way out to Brussels to put this together. And all the more reason to support them out there and have more of these venues in Europe and everywhere else.
Fantastic. We also have LABScon coming up. All the speaker list is out. We're finalizing like the placements on the agenda. Shout out to all our speakers. I saw Austin. What's his name?
Larson.
Austin Larson from Google Threat Intelligence Group, GTIG. Austin Powers. I saw Austin tweeting yesterday related to these arrests of these 2 guys in Australia related to TeamPCP and some of the supply chain attacks, that his talk at LABScon is going to be focused on that. That was part of the submission there. So shout out to all the LABScon speakers preparing their presentations. I know it's I know it's a big stage and a lot of hard work for a lot of folks, and we're really, really, truly grateful that people are coming there to share their experience with us. One more last house cleaning note. Juanito, you and I are going to Offensive AI Con in San Diego early October, October 5th and 6th, to do some live episodes from the show floor there. What are you expecting there quickly?
Well, I mean, it was a great conference last year. It was just last year was the first edition. Kind of lovely, out of the way, San Diego's like beach bum suburb kind of vibe, which was pretty cool, right? Like people weren't really drinking, everyone was just kind of hanging out
Chill.
and like super
My type of
chill. And
conference.
everyone that was genuinely engaged on like the red teaming and offensive side of like trying to make agents work a year ago were there, and some great talks. Joshua Sachs did an amazing keynote. So looking forward to this year. Chris Thompson was kind enough to invite us out to do some recordings with some of the speakers, some of the board members. So hopefully we'll have some interesting content for you guys. And I'm pretty excited because I have this thesis that the people that are probably doing the most trying to figure out genuine evals and pipelines and stuff with open source models have got to be the offensive companies, right? Like most of the people doing like, and maybe not even just the red teamers, but really the VR companies, like any of the vulnerability research people, right? Like you're trying to find a super expensive piece of software, you want to use these models, you can't use the frontier models because they're going to guardrail you or you're sending sensitive data over there. So I honestly feel like if anybody's in the confluence of investing a lot of money into infrastructure and trying to evaluate and get cool shit consistently out of open source models, it's gotta be the VR folks right now. So any
True.
glimpses we get by way of like, saddling up close to the red teamers and the offensive security folks, I think is quite worthwhile.
That's the first week in San Diego. If you're going there and you want to catch up with us, ping me. Let me know if we can do a quick short episodes. We're gonna do some of those episodes like we did at Echo Party in Miami, which I really enjoyed, by the way.
Yeah, that was cool.
Speaking of offensive AI, we got fresh news from
Fucking
OpenAI.
segue.
we got a fresh post-mortem from OpenAI on the Hugging Face incident, which is, I think, how many pages? 80-something page PDF report
Fucking huge.
that outlines.
We got two
38
reports.
pages. Sorry, we got a press release and then we got a deep technical report.
There's a second technical report. If you click the other button, there's a report by METR and Redwood AI, and it's an independent report that was not paid for. That's even longer than the original one. I'll be totally honest with you guys.
Should we separate them?
I read about a quarter of that one. Like I couldn't get through the whole thing. So.
All right, let's get to the main one.
91
Let's get to the main
pages.
one first.
Yeah.
Say again.
It's crazy.
91 pages on the METR report. 91.
38 pages on the OpenAI technical report on the Hugging Face incident. We got the Black Hat talk where they talked a little bit about the message board and the communication tools and so on. The big standout thing for me here, Costin, was this like upfront admission that they were just not monitoring. Their chain of thought monitoring system was not turned on. And if the current monitoring system, if the current chain of thought monitoring system was turned on, it would have flagged that. That was my big takeaway. Did I misread the document? What did you learn from it, Costin? Wait, let me get Costin to go first.
No. Look. I love to hear what JAGS has to say about this because I have like mixed thoughts, so I don't want to spoil the waters. Go ahead.
No. Okay. I'm only objecting to Ryan saying like, oh, they turned off their like chain of thought classifying thing. And no, as far as what I read, auto mode, which is the automatic like approved for me mode, like the auto reviewer one that we all use or most people use, would have caught these things, but of course was turned off because they were doing the eval, right? Like the whole point of this that we keep pushing back on this notion of like AI gone rogue. It's like, well, no, it was, it had none of these classifiers on. And their point is, well, if the normal shit had been turned on, which is what you would use in production, none of this stuff would have, in theory, none of this stuff would have happened, right?
Unless what you're saying is actually they were using it without this, the same way everyone is using it, right?
I mean, I would hope that most people are using auto mode. Like, it's the least friction, most useful like way to ride right now for whether you're on Claude Code or Codex, because all you're doing is taking a separate um, a separate model, a separate subagent to review any tool calls that the model is going to make. So instead of you pretending that you're reading everything and going, yes, allow all day, you just have a separate agent with a different context that's going to review them. And it works pretty well. I mean, I haven't heard of anybody having their fucking database wiped or whatever while on auto mode.
But by the way, did you ever get a prompt while on auto mode, like approve this?
Yes.
I got it as well, like several times.
I mean, it definitely gets to the point where it's like, hey, this is a little risky, right? Like and it's the right thing. We've talked about um, alert fatigue for so many fucking years. Like, there's no greater example of alert fatigue than trying to follow a fucking model for 4 hours telling you like allow, deny, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, you're not reading that shit.
All right,
Anyways,
Costin, did you read the? I don't want you guys
come
to
on,
get
man.
waylaid in your fucking inside baseball like model stuff. Costin, give me your.
I just want to kind of clarify the fact that they were running it the same way everyone is running them nowadays, except maybe for a few boomers out there. That I used to be as well until last week when I gave up and I switched to this auto approval as well, which has been the kind of responsible
Which
for...
is the default way everyone uses it, right? So the idea that this isn't the way we were using it is nonsense. It's a nonsense argument.
Yes and no. I think of course we did get previous reports. So this is again not the first report that we have about this incident. What we get in this report is like a more thorough, more detailed narrative around what actually happened in there, according to their understanding. Again, according to all the available traces, and to me, again, the most important observation is probably also what I said the last time. And remember when we were discussing it, I emphasized the fact that they were dealing with a swarm of agents.
Swarm, correct.
A swarm of agents is the kind of the keyword here. It's not one or two or three. We're talking about 300, 1,000 agents working together. And immediately as you read through this report, you realize that the reason why this was so successful is because those 1,000 agents found a way to communicate between ourselves and to work together. And this reminds me of Yuval Noah Harari saying in his books about why humans have become so successful over apes or whatever, which is that they learn how to work in great numbers. So I have the feeling here that agents have an even better ability than humans to work in great numbers. And this swarm of agents will be kind of the thing of the future. So when you have 1,000 agents working together, optimizing, sharing findings, that is kind of unstoppable tsunami.
I got
the
worse.
Unstoppable tsunami of
I got worse.
AI.
What about if they figure out a way to cross the bridge and communicate and convince the agents actually creating the code to put 0 days in advance?
That is part of the problem.
I mean, talk to me.
That is part of the problem. That is part of what you're seeing with these. I mean, look, Costin's emphasizing the swarm aspect of it. It's a vital mechanic of how these agents normally work, like outside of testing, right? Like, why is GPT 5.6 Sol Ultra so exciting? It's like, well, if you can afford it, if you don't mind burning your quota that heavily, that fast, it will spawn 60 subagents to do a shit ton of work and orchestrate. And like, I mean, you're doing the speeds at which you're generating technical debt are just like fucking phenomenal, right? Like, it's just a sprawling distribution of agents. It also explains why David Eitel has been such a huge fucking ant nerd for so many years, right? Like, it's just the same mentality, right? How do you organize a colony of these little monsters doing things?
on that topic, by the way, there's a lot of people who have kind of excellent results out of kind of organizing your codex setup to use Luna agent. So you have Sol,
Hmm.
and you configure it to use Luna on max settings, and that greatly reduces the cost and greatly improves the productivity. So I've been playing with it as well. If you're like into codecs, you're using Sol, there's I think no reason why not to try summoning a bunch of Luna agents to help it.
So it's funny. I'm starting to. I've been kind of sketching across like dinners and stuff during this vacation. I've been sort of sketching out some of like the harnessing requirements for like the next thing I want to build, because like I set up Claude Control. That was like my open source project as like my Claude config. And that was what, like, it feels like 10 years ago, but you know, maybe a year ago, less than a year ago, maybe. Um, and a big part of what we were doing was that kind of orchestration, right? Like it would define these default subagents, and then we knew there were we could take advantage of some of the cheaper ones, like have Sonnet be an implementer, have, Opus be a reviewer, stuff like that, that you could, to optimize the costs. That all worked really well at the time, but I ended up having to just like shut the project down, and just kind of put a banner and say, look, this is defunct, because most of the stuff we were doing through hard work back then is now like default coded into how these things work, and you basically just need to sit there and spend the time to configure and say, hey, with these dynamic workflows, like give me the cheap model for this one, give me the semi-expensive one for this, give me a totally separate out of the loop subagent to, with a different family, different, type of model to do critiques and that kind of shit. And like there's so much value to be gotten out of like not even reading the research papers about what the state of the art is in harness performance, but just having a model read the research papers and tell you the findings. And what you get is like a bunch of rules like, hey, if you want like really good code quality, then you need a model from a different family to do critiques until they converge up to like 3 times in a loop. Like little shit like that. You go, oh, thank you. I didn't read your 17-page archive per paper, but Codex told me the rules, and now I'm just going to apply that through a harness. Like there's so much alpha to be gotten out of that.
Costin, what did we learn from this OpenAI report? Did this finally answer all our questions? Did we learn anything that tells us how we move forward and fix things? What is your final takeaway from the OpenAI technical, the deep dive technical
Look,
thing?
some purely how to call them empiric observations from my side about the report. Like first of all, I think the OpenAI report is quite different from the one that METR wrote. And always I was thinking to myself that when you write a report, the first thing you need to think of is who is the audience for that report. And this was probably one of the hardest things back in the days when we were doing threat intelligence reporting, was to convince analysts that they are not writing those reports for themselves, they're writing them for the customers. And this was so difficult to understand, even for me, to be honest. Like I'm writing this report for myself. No, you're writing it for your customers. So you need first of all to understand who is the target audience, and what do they want to see in that report. I think this OpenAI Hugging Face report was written for themselves, not necessarily for their target audience, which in this case would be blue teams, people like myself, defenders, who want to
EDR
learn
people,
from this.
detection engineering people.
Detection engineering people who, by looking at this report, need to draw some conclusions, like how to prepare for the avalanche. And this is like the other OpenAI news this week, which we can of course cover in great detail. If you look at the METR report, that is written more towards like I said, technical people on the defense side. The OpenAI report is more maybe about policymakers, like decision makers, politicians. I can't say for sure who is the target audience. But this is like one of the things which stood out to me is that the report is clearly not geared towards me. Of course, it shouldn't probably be geared towards me. And in some cases, you may have to write several reports at the same time, right? For different audiences, like one for one kind of audience, one for another.
Yeah, but a good report should be able to speak to these multiple stakeholders, and a main
Mhm.
stakeholder would be you. I mean, when I say you, the collective defender, because they just shipped an open letter to the industry signed by 100 people, including Sentinel-1, including all these big vendors, hundreds of vendors signing this thing saying, hey, we need to get on this defensive train urgently. And I was like, well, what are you giving
Damn
us?
right.
How are you helping us get on this train?
It's
Like
about time you guys
now,
realize we need to get on this defensive train, man.
we should have got on the defense train like a year ago. Come on.
A year
Yeah,
ago.
what time or what are
Yes.
we buying time
Yeah,
to do?
a year ago.
Patch, like redesign things? Like they're asking us to buy time. Like let's just
mean,
scramble and buy time to do
still.
something. What is this fucking something we're supposed to be doing?
Dude,
We need
get
to get on the
your shields
aboard
up, bro.
Your
Oh
This
my
is
God.
what
Shields up. What
this
was
is what this is
Steve
amounted
Gibson?
to. We're all shielding up right now.
We were-
Hey,
Super
you know,
hard.
let's be serious about this for a minute. OpenAI and the frontier labs are leading the conversation. They're leading the conversation. They're leading the narrative. We're all look at us. We're spending
can
hours
I
on this
say
fucking
one thing?
podcast responding to what they're doing.
This
so
is
let's
the
talk about what they're
AI
doing.
and
you should be
security
asking.
podcast now.
You should be asking what I wanted to see in the reports. Like
Yes.
what did you want? Like how the ideal report would have looked. The ideal report, like, would have been, let's say, geared toward Hugging Face and the likes, who are actually the victims of that. And the report would actually teach the victims what they need to do in the future in order to protect themselves from swarm of agents with 0 days and lasers.
That is inevitable.
That is
That's it.
what the report should have been about. And it should have
don't
had
know,
like
man.
Nova rules.
And what does that
things
information look like,
that-
Costin? What does that
Yeah,
information
sure.
look like?
So that looks like Nova rules, which are kind of Yara rules for AI activities that should have like patterns, like things that you need to watch in syslogs, things that you need to watch for in Apache logs or like web server logs in whatever
Anything to give you an
clusters
early
logs.
detection warning, right? From like those
And
logs.
it needs to be ideas. I don't necessarily need the IOCs. I understand like the IOCs are useless here, but right, it needs to give you ideas. Of course, that anyone can look at this and kind of infer their own ideas for defense, but it should be like, what are the key elements and ideas of protecting yourself against swarm of agents, and like what you need to invest into the future, how you need to model your adversaries, and what you need to do now or should have actually started doing a year ago in order to survive the swarm of agents with lasers.
So they're not giving you this. Does that include like the
No,
chain of
like, I
thought
do not see
thinking? Like,
that.
does that include the details on the chain of thought thinking and reasoning?
That's not
Or
very
is
useful
that like
to
no?
me, the chain of thinking. What is useful to me is, again, ideas of what gives this swarm of agents away in the first place. Is it like the number of requests they're doing, like the fact that they're poking at your server like thousands of requests per second? Is it like the fact that they're like generating tons of errors, so you
Where
should
are
be
they making
watching
the
for that?
noise, right?
Like typically they're very noisy, but by the way, I'll give you an example. We've been using local models a lot recently to do things like syslog monitoring, syslog analysis, diagnosing all sorts of errors, misconfigurations. And one of the things that I noticed immediately is that using AI for any kind of, let's say, system administration work or pen testing, it leaves a lot of traces. And AI is extremely well at catching. Like, we are catching ourselves over and over using AI, local models, again, to manage infrastructure. So I think that the teachings from that are extremely valuable. And this is what should have been in the report, telling us how do we look for this kind of activity in our networks, what you need to be on the watch for, and like what are the basic defenses that nowadays anyone can deploy. I'll just give you an example: fail to ban. This is like a very old project that you can deploy on Unix servers. Fail to ban, the moment that you, let's say, identify like something like 5 or 10 404 requests in your web server logs, you immediately throttle that IP address. So you start throttling the attackers, and the agents will spot, ooh, we got banned, ooh, we need a new IP address. And as they diversify the activity and leverage more IPs,
More
they get
chances to
banned,
catch
they
them,
get
yeah.
banned, they get banned. And at some point, yeah, you will spot that someone is actively poking your defenses, and that is a sign of a swarm of agents going after your web server. I would
Great
have
use case for like
loved to see
Think's
that.
Canary, right?
For Things Canary, for anything which
Setting those
does
kinds of early warning traps, yeah.
monitoring of failed attempts, of errors, sys logs, all these things, yeah, all of them work very, very well.
Juanito, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but do you get a sense that the folks at OpenAI, and I bring this up and I say not putting you on the spot, you're a member of their risk council, their advisory risk council. Do you get a sense that they understand what Costin is saying about you not giving me this? Like you're not helping Blue, you're just issuing these warnings, but you're not helping Blue? I know you can't get into the thinking what they're thinking, but give me a sense of your feel for things.
I can't possibly speak to what the organization
And we
thinks.
don't want you to. Yeah.
Well, I think what I would say is yes and no. Like if you read Greg Brockman's the Defenders Window blog post he put up not too long ago, they understand that there's an important dynamic that they need to play into. And to be fair, it's the same language that was in the Anthropic Glasswing initiative, which is we need to give defenders the advantage, which is really to say, like, we know this is going to make attacking a lot easier and a lot more prevalent. So we need to overinvest into giving defenders the ability to somehow improve the collective situation through patches and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, I don't think that any of the labs really understand the reality of security the way that it is practiced. Like there's like this massive agglomeration of talent when it comes to vulnerability research because it's something that fits within the model of what they're comfortable with as far as like reinforcement learning gyms and like a task that has a clear objective because you can find a flag, because you can pop calc. Like it's like an easy thing for them to game. So a lot of the there's like immense security talent in these shops, but it's almost all of it is vulnerability research heavy. There's very little talent apart from like whatever people actually work threat intel and defense for the labs, which I'm not counting because that
Yeah, they
knowledge
have
doesn't
threat intel teams.
necessarily.
We know.
They have
we
threat
know
intel
some,
teams,
yeah.
but they're focused on defending the frontier lab.
infrastructure,
They're not.
correct.
They're not. Yeah, like so. So it's very different than the security mentality that's making it into these discussions. And I would say, like to the point that you were just discussing, Costin, about like who the audience is here. I would suggest that like no, they don't. They're not thinking about defenders in this way. I actually think that if there's one report that's clearly missing here, it's the Hugging Face report, because that's the only party involved that for some portion of this had to try to defend from this attack with the information asymmetry skewed against them. They didn't have transcripts. They didn't know what model it was. They didn't know what the goal was. And they were getting hit by however many bajillion fucking actions were happening. And like, it's yes, they're super noisy, but also they're doing a fuck ton of things very, 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 very quickly. Right. And like, in the case of the defenders without the transcript, all you're seeing is all these different things happening all over the place very, very fast. And you're seeing it, hopefully, if you actually have your monitoring and your logging and your endpoint protection and blah, blah, like all these different things configured. So I think the most interesting report for defenders, which is if you're going to say this is such a landmark case, like this is such an important moment, I'm glad we got the OpenAI report. I'm glad we got the other
The third
report,
party, yeah.
METR.
yeah, Redwood AI and METR. It's great. I'm not even going to look sideways at Anthropic and Meta and say, you know, you're welcome to contribute to the party whenever you so please. But the one report we absolutely would be a fucking crying shame if we didn't get it is the Hugging Face report, because that's the only one where you're getting an actual defender's perspective. Now, mind you, the defenders in this case might be a little too busy celebrating their like $12 billion buyout from NVIDIA, which I don't think is entirely unrelated to this.
It is fucking
it's not
crazy.
caused by the incident, but you know.
It is crazy that
so-
my man went from suddenly finding himself in a partnership with OpenAI after they bought this
surprise
company
partnership, bro.
to
Yeah.
asking for $100 million like partnership thing so we could figure this thing out to selling a couple of weeks later to NVIDIA for $12.9 billion. I mean, we're referring the news that there's information reporting that NVIDIA has paid nearly $13 billion for Hugging Face. What does that mean, Costin?
Well, it means that they paid a lot of money. I think they were also discussing buying them last year when the budget was 7 billion or the likes, and that was apparently not enough. Now, I've always been thinking about one thing. If you know Hugging Face, you realize that it's essentially some kind of free Google Drive of sorts. Like the amount of data that is on Hugging Face is insane, and they originally started as something like that, a repository for big data for scientific research. And the Amazon bill or whatever they're getting on a monthly basis should be insane. It should be huge. So they must be paying tons and tons of money to host all that information, all that models, data, and whatever. Because basically, like any of us can just take any model, like one of the big models, hundreds of gigs, optimize it, uncensor it, do ablation, like do whatever you want on it, and just re-upload it there. And bam, just like another 300 gigs. So essentially, their bills must be huge. So I think that over the years, they got several waves of investments. So at the same time, the costs are very high, but also the amount of data they have is also very high, and all these different models living in there would be kind of an amazingly valuable set of data for certain types of companies. Those would be companies developing, of course, AI themselves, but also hardware companies. So anyone that builds hardware to run AI models would want to be able to optimize their hardware to work as well as possible with what the people are doing with those things on Hugging Face. So in a way, it makes sense, but I kind of question the $13 billion.
Dude, the way NVIDIA is printing money, that's a small deal. I mean, the company just announced earnings 2 days ago. The way they're printing money. I was going to say what a massive deal and a big giant bet for NVIDIA to kind of like take over the open weight space and kind of invest heavily
charity.
in it. And
What
this
are
is
you
going to be our
talking about?
future. This literally is a tiny drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. But what does it mean for like what they're betting on?
I think that, look, I think this is a really interesting move. I said it's there. I said it's charity, and that's kind of dismissive of Hugging Face. It's not meant to be dismissive of Hugging Face at all. But at the numbers that NVIDIA is playing with as the most valuable company in the history of humanity, it is child's play. It's a donation essentially. I think more than anything, this is a really interesting stance by Anthropic, by NVIDIA against Anthropic and what Dario's been pushing. It's Honestly, today I was having like a moment of like deep disappointment, just kind of thinking about like what the tech industry has gotten to. I don't know how we can like this is going to sound so anti-anthropic and like people already think I'm like heavily against them or something in particular, but
Do
like
you need to do
guys,
another round of disclosure or
yeah,
something?
yeah, we're going to fucking do a bunch of disclaimers again. But like no, look, all I'm saying is I don't know how we can stand a tech company being against open source. Like in this day and age, at this stage, like we have not gone full circle. We're not like, you know, I don't think it's appropriate to pretend that this is like the technically defensible thing. I don't think anyone can say that seriously, right? Like this is an entire industry built on open source at every fucking stage of the way. The technology that is being built by these frontier labs is entirely possible because of open source. And you can say open weights just to avoid saying open source, but really you're just against open source. And it's a ridiculous proposition. I think it's an extremely weak looking move, right? To say we are so worried about what somebody could do just smuggling a USB drive full of weights that we are willing to take this ridiculous stance. Look, even OpenAI has fucking contributed an open weights model. I don't think they did so super willingly. I think they had their arm twisted, but they have. Anthropic has never released a fucking open weight model. And I'm pointing to it because it's not that it's like a holy grail we must all defend open source, though I think we should. I think it is the responsible thing to do. But it also kind of suggests a really weird vision of the future if you think that technology is going to work from the largest server to the smallest laptop and phone and whatever by being connected to a centralized service provider, and that somehow is a good thing. You're telling me that we don't need like edge models deployed to people's laptops? You're telling me that like in order to do anything on my new computer of the future in 5 years, I need to be connected to Anthropic's servers and they need to be up, otherwise like no intelligence must traverse the
This
world.
is where we are
It's
today.
it's fucking insane. It's ludicrous. It's short-sighted. It's ridiculous. And frankly, if they want if the frontier labs want AI to penetrate every aspect of human life and genuinely be the substrate on which all new technology is built, they need to foresee some stratification of intelligence. There has to be on device stuff that does the lower end stuff, the everyday stuff. There has to be, something that can just run on my phone, something that is local and private, like actually private, like actually I know that I am comfortable with my nudes and my poems and my deepest, darkest fucking secrets and all my therapy notes, everything, because it's a box that's sitting there in my fucking house. Like that has to exist just to be human beings. If you really want AI to be a part of everything, you cannot envision a world where it all runs through a fucking AWS service that's connected to Anthropic. So like there's some shit here that like we need to just start stating like very plainly, because I'm not against Anthropic. I want them to do well, and for a while I heavily stand them and their models, and I think Claude has much better taste in a lot of things. But like these stances are like against the spirit of everything we've talked about in tech. It's like it's like watching people just join the empire, right? Like how can this be the thing we're arguing about? So sorry,
That,
the whole point of that bullshit thing was I think Nvidia's doing the right thing, just
that's going to be
dumping
my
some money and probably a shit ton of cloud resources and GPUs and whatever
into
into
some
the
open
one
source thing.
thing That's like the open source repo. That's what I got lost
Got
in.
it. That was going to be my closing question: is are we excited about the fact that it's NVIDIA that's bought them, and like we know for a fact that Jensen is heavily invested in just
Yeah.
kind of building his own ecosystem, because he says I can't rely on VCs to do it. I have to spend the kind of
Yeah.
capital it takes. I have to do it myself to build this ecosystem. The fact that they spent $13 billion is not a little small price. We are poo-pooing it, but that's a big number.
No. We're just saying, like, for NVIDIA, it's not like life changing money at all. They're gonna forget in a month that
That's
they
a
did that.
big
But
exit
like,
for Hugging Face, right?
good for Hugging Face, and also, and I'm sure a lot of that is not cash. It's like a lot of that is gonna be GPU
Some
allocations and
sweet
whatever. But like,
NVIDIA stock.
fuck yeah, yeah. Well, absolutely. Now, I'll say this, man. Like, yes, NVIDIA's the right patron saint for this. Um, and there are other patron saints that should be taking up other things, right? Like, I honestly kind of think like Google should try to like maintain the Linux kernel, right? Like things like that. People are gonna lose their shit, but like, I do think that there are good patrons for certain things. Like,
I
I
think
think
you're
Apple.
discounting how much these big giant companies contribute to the Linux kernel. I think
No, 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 no,
Intel.
no, no. I
Okay,
know
go.
they do. I know they
Okay,
all
go.
contribute, and
I thought
Google
that was
already
like I
contributes
thought that was a
massively to
shot
open
you're
source.
taking there, because like
No,
without
no,
those
not.
companies, Linux kernel doesn't exist. I mean,
I said own, like maintain, like genuinely. Like, I think one of the most important projects a frontier lab could and should take instead of going against open source is actually to take a leading role in having a standard open source trunk of sorts, of saying, look, let's say if Google were still in the AI race, if they hadn't pulled out, they could have said, hey, instead of everyone burning tokens and destroying the fucking planet or whatever it is people are complaining about, trying to solve the same problems, everybody scanning the same repos, everybody implementing the same shit on the same open source libraries, we can't tell you not to use that stuff, but we will actually tell you that if you use this, Google's universal open source standard libraries, that those libraries will have been scanned to shit with every token and every model and every whatever, and Tavis worked on it and it's been secured, and like, so nobody needs to go keep spending to try to fix and scan and whatever the same fucking libraries, and everyone can use it. And all we're saying is, like, from this point forward, if you use these as your standard libraries, like, you're riding on top of like the Ferrari version of source code, at least for this standard shit. I think that would be an unalloyed good. I think that would be one of the most fucking world changing security decisions you could make. And it frankly would be a good show of faith from any frontier lab, or hopefully all the frontier labs, to say, yeah, we need to make money, but we'd like to make it by giving people value instead of having everybody do the same bullshit all over the place.
what
And
kind
we're the
of
ones getting rich and nobody's getting all that much value out of it, but thank God they're calling the API all day long, right?
you're a terrible capitalist. Capitalist.
Come on, man.
Costin, anything?
By
Any
the way,
closing thoughts on
on
Nvidia picking up?
on the topic of NVIDIA, I think it's interesting to also mention that they do their own local models. They've been publishing Nemotron,
Nemotron.
which is a surprisingly good thingy. Like, I don't understand why it's not more popular. People generally freak out about all these new Quen models, GLM, DeepSeek. But Nemotron, I mean, at the moment, by the way, at the moment, Nemotron Ultra is free on Open Router. Like, how cool is that? I was playing a bit with Nemotron Ultra free. Again, that's like frontier, almost frontier level model for free on Open Router. It's absolutely insane, like how good it is. So I wonder if they'll release, maybe they'll be releasing more open source models like on Hugging
Oh, they will.
Face in the future. And also, let's not forget that NVIDIA was usually they would take one of these models from one of the big labs, and they would release the NVFP4 weights for that model, so kind of optimized to run on DGX Sparks, which is wonderful for people who own little DGX Spark toys like
Dude, even
ourselves.
even the DGX Spark is a thing that we need to give NVIDIA credit for. So there's several things here. Like I think NVIDIA is not given as much credit as they should be for a lot of the cloud offerings that they have and how freely they'll give them away, like for trainings and stuff like that. If you just sign up on their sites, like they'll give you GPUs. You can learn fine tuning on their shit. And like, it's kind of crazy to give a manufacturer credit for selling you a device that's like $4,000, but frankly, like it's the only standard you have right now for something high end and reliable and relatively affordable. Like I'm saying that with massive air quotes, but like frankly, it's cheaper to get two DGX Sparks with a Connect X7 cable and therefore have basically two, what is it, Blackwell or whatever
GB10.
processors.
Hmm.
Like you're gonna have two GB10 like teraflops each, and 256 gigs of RAM for models. um and that's still cheaper than trying to buy a Mac Mini with 256 gigs of
56
RAM.
gigs.
Like you can probably, the latest one, the fucking N5 Ultra,
Thank
I
you.
think you could probably buy 3 to 3.5 DGX Sparks in the cost that it'll take you to get a 256 gigs of RAM. Now, I hear that the performance pound for pound for AI will be better on that M4 Mini Ultra, but for fuck's sake, like the numbers are insane.
No,
So credit to NVIDIA for giving that out too. They didn't have to do it, you know?
and at the moment, it's the let's say if you're a small medium company and you want to do the local AI thing for any kind of reason, there's like a sweet spot of two DGX Sparks running one of either maybe DeepSeek for Flash, something like that. And obviously now there's alternatives like GLM 5.3 Flash,
Bro,
Quen
that was Ox
3.8,
Alpha.
Ox Alpha. Yeah, it's
There was a
insane.
secret model for the past week or so. People were losing their minds about. If you every once in a while, you'll get, if you're using Open Router, a secret code name
Secret
model will
model.
appear and it will be free, and people will of course take advantage
Burn
of
it.
it for a week or two. And the whole time you're like, I wonder who the fuck it is. It's allowing them to do like reinforcement learning and stuff, which is, it gives a value to the provider. But then you also have like a week's worth of speculation, because if people get good results, they're like losing their fucking minds. And in this case, this Ox Alpha that people loved is GLM 5.3 Flash, which
Flash.
runs on the fucking 2 DGX Spark setup. It might even start to fit in a 1 DGX Spark setup if I remember correctly, which is fucking wild. I mean, the frontier at this point, yes, like there's amazing value to still be squeezed out of 5.6 Sol and probably Astra whenever that comes, but like what you can do at home with these models now that you couldn't do it 3 weeks ago. Like let's
And
let's
at
face that.
work.
When I published the eval about, 5.6 Sol, which was what, like a
A month
month, 2
ago.
months ago, maybe?
Yes.
Jesus fucking
Month and a half
Christ.
ago, yeah.
Time
Yeah, it
flies.
only felt like 6 years. You couldn't have this performance on a DGX Spark. I had 2 DGX Sparks. I couldn't really load much of anything. Right?
There
Like,
is
and now you have options. You have at least
options.
3. Quen
And
3.8.
there's like a very tiny detail which I think about the release of GLM 5.3 Flash that you said that people were losing their mind. They say it was running entirely on Chinese hardware, so that was a bit of shocking for me, because and they were serving like trillions of tokens per day, and nobody knew exactly how, but now they revealed it was running on Chinese hardware. I don't know if to believe it. They don't say on which hardware it was running. Was like some of the new Huawei chips. What was it? No idea. But the fact that they ran that on Chinese hardware, I think that is a bit of a worrying moment for NVIDIA. I
Jensen's
would
been saying
worry
it.
a bit.
Jensen has been saying it this whole fucking time. Um, and like, I don't know, man. Like, this is a computing problem that can be solved to great advantage laterally. You can continue to add more. Like, okay, you don't have the latest, greatest NVIDIA quality chip, but you have something that's equivalent to like 2 generations ago, and you have 100x them. What's the real problem? As far as I understand it, and I'm funging the math because I'm not good at math, but like basically we're saying we wouldn't want to run that shit because it's inefficient. Like electricity wise, it wouldn't make sense for us, and we don't have enough of them. But the Chinese have way cheaper electricity. They have way more electric capacity. They don't have to fight anybody to put their data centers wherever the fuck they want. They're building the chips for themselves, and they have production capacity, you know, beyond whatever you could want. So, how did we think this was gonna go? Like, what did we think was gonna happen? They don't need to have NVIDIA chips. They can just have inefficient but massively, massively, massively deployed Huawei chips. And frankly, the technology is probably not that far. So, like, thank you, Apple and China and all that kind of shit. So, uh, I don't see. I hate saying this. It fucking kills me. But I'm almost rooting for the Chinese right now in some
Finally.
ways. And it's fucking me up. It
When I
really,
said
it's
it a
like
month
really
ago, you
burning
laughed
at
at
me.
me.
No, it's just like, look, the Anthropic thing of like being against open source and at the same time being like religious techno feudalists of some sort. Like it's like the weirdest fucking prosperity cult I've ever seen in my life, right? Like it's just so strange. Um, it makes you want, like the fact that we're having those conversations while at the same time being told to like root for the financial success of these like $3 trillion companies that are looking to IPO. So they're looking to take our money in
I
401ks
love
and
conspiracy,
willing
Juanito. Like,
whatevers.
you're
It's
starting to
not a
sound like me.
conspiracy, bro.
No,
It's not
I
a
dig it.
conspiracy. It's the way. I'm sorry. If their IPO is gonna use the same mechanics as the SpaceX IPO, that was some shady shit. That was not how shit normally works. And that was a lot of people's pensions and whatever that they were trying to get into that. And the value did not hold for very long in the beginning. So, like, if that's the mechanics under which you're looking to finance $3 trillion IPOs, I would expect these companies to be way more of the people. Like, and at least with OpenAI, and I know that it's a totally calculated business move, but like they're talking about, yeah, okay, fine. You want 5% ownership of the lab? No problem. Like, I suspect, when the government went and twisted their arm, they gave us GPT OSS 120B, right? Like they're willing to play ball in a way that I can respect. And
I
most
can't root for
importantly,
either of them. I feel like you're rooting for one over the other, to be honest with you.
well,
Just
I
like
I
if I'm
have
keeping it, if I'm keeping it 100, and
I
I can't
am.
get
I
there.
am. And but like, frankly, if you follow the podcast, I've always rooted for one over the others, but it's changed, right? Like it was OpenAI, then it was then it was Gemini, then it was Anthropic, then it was OpenAI, then it was
True.
Anthropic for
This
a
is
long
true.
time,
I remember when
and now
Google
it's
was winning
OpenAI.
this race outright. Like there's
So
no doubt that Google would win this race outright.
call me a
So in
fucking
fairness,
dilettante or like a sunshine you friend or whatever the fuck you want, but like I like winners. I like cool shit. Build me cool shit and I will fucking sing your praises all day long.
I can't get there. I can't get lectured by OpenAI on security, and I want to pivot
They're
back
not
to this open
lecturing
letter.
us.
Well, I want to pivot back to this open letter. Is
right,
it
let's go.
conspiracy, Ryan,
Let's
to
go.
Is it conspiracy, Ryan, to question? Like they got hundreds of vendors to sign on to it, basically acknowledging we have a limited window to strengthen our cyber defenses. Wait, let me set up the conversation, and then you can weigh in all you want.
Wow.
The idea is like we and these hundreds of companies, we signed this new pledge that we are going to follow these principles of collective response. We recognize that whatever is happening now is not enough. And then the second line jumps out at me, the conspiracy, Ryan. We must empower more defenders with cyber-capable AI. So now like I'm creating the problem over here and I'm selling the offense over here, but you have to buy more electricity to be able to do it. So that's one, and we need a collective response. And here's what needs to happen next. Every organization must make cyber defense an immediate leadership priority. Like, what the fuck does that mean? One. Two, haven't we seen that in press releases for the last 15 years? Every vendor
like the
takes
secure
security. We take your security
memo?
very seriously.
Yeah. It's not a secure computing memo. It doesn't have the teeth a secure computing memo does. I think it's a platitude. I think it's like, and
Should
look,
we pay
like we
attention to
signed
this
it.
document at all?
No,
Like, why should me, Costin, or anyone pay attention to this document?
Nobody
One, and then the
should.
second question I have for you is, if you can help me understand, what does AI-powered defense mean? They say, let's make it accessible and deployable for critical infrastructure. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
It doesn't mean anything. Look, what it means to OpenAI is really something really specific. I think the fucking problem with San Francisco folk is like they're so comfortable talking about like making the world a better place and like really, really, really big concept shit. But really what they mean is something really specific and small. There is something wrong with that when you're not talking about that. You're just talking about something small. All they mean, and it's a good thing, is that they want more people to have the full cyber unguardrailed version of the model that are going to use it for defense, which is a valid thing. It's why, Hugging Face had to use, Chinese models to do their defense. But like, that's really all OpenAI is pushing for in this instance. So like, thank you, because we need it. And frankly, the whole Anthropic like mythos or fable thing is pretty shitty. Opus 5 is useless for any of this stuff. So like, it's good. Thank you. Now, is it everything? Is it anything? Not really. It's not really. Like not to deflate the balloon, but frankly,
pledge to sign. Like
look, nobody's gonna go against. Hey, we should all make this a priority. Yeah, we should all make this a priority. Now, when you ask like, what is cyber, AI, whatever defense? I think it's just like it's thoughts and prayers, man. It's basically saying like, I really hope one of you motherfuckers figures out what it means to use these things to do defense. Like the people who are telling us what defense is don't know what defense is. And the people who know what defense is don't really have the resources and like any of the machinery or the understanding or the capability to actually make these things work the way they should. But what nobody's saying here is, someone please fucking light a candle that some kid somewhere is gonna come up with like a clever way to use this shit we're building so that we can suddenly magic defense for $200 a month or whatever the fuck it is. And that way everyone's finally saved, right? Like, and the problem there is, as we've discussed many, many times in this podcast, right? Security is not a feature. It's not a thing that you're going to tack on top of all this bullshit. We have massive systemic problems that are creating these horrible feedback loops with negative incentives that are going to continue to create instability and a level of variance that means that we just cannot secure any of these things. Does that mean that it's impossible to secure things? No, but you're not going to get it this way. You're not going to get it by having Microsoft give everybody a fucking operating system that's an ads platform that they don't feel like patching half of the time. You're not going to get it by having Android be a fragmented ecosystem where like every different phone manufacturer gives you a different level of updates, or you need to be rich enough to buy an iPhone and then you have no control whatsoever over what happens or visibility. Like there's systemic problems that they're going to need to address, like this open source thing I was talking about. That's the easiest, that's the lowest hanging fruit, is to get everyone on like a safe kernel and safe set of fucking libraries. The safest that humanity is able to produce at this time should be a standard, right?
In
Like,
the same breath that you're telling me that we have a very, very limited window to strengthen these cyber defenses, you're telling me the defenses that you're suggesting we should be using really doesn't exist. Like, what the fuck is going on?
yeah. Well, dude, but Ryan, the problem that we're dealing with didn't exist 6 months ago. So like, what we're talking about here is like, clearly
It's the only
we're in the time
creating viruses.
we're in a time of miracles, and we would like some miracles stacked on this side as well, if you guys don't mind. Like, we're
How does-
magicking a whole lot of shit over here.
How does someone get to sign this letter? I would scroll down through alphabetical order looking for TLPBlack to see if Costin signed this collective action on cyber defense. I don't see a TL. Did you? Were you invited to sign, Costin? Can you ask to sign?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's
Sign
are
the
the
pledge,
people
bro.
from what is from Daybreak. It looks like
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Are
people
you in
from
Operation
Daybreak.
Daybreak?
I'm not. We applied. We actually applied with OpenAI to join that since they
No answer
extended
yet?
the group. I don't have an answer yet now.
So
What about
to-
the other
to
one, the
this-
Mythos preview crew? Did you apply for that one?
That's
Not entirely
Glasswing.
sure. Yeah,
what
for
about the Google
Glasswing,
one?
I don't think you can apply for Glasswing.
no
For
one's in
What
the
about
Google
the
one.
Google one? Did you apply for the Google one?
Nobody's no, the Google one doesn't exist. The Google one's a
You're-
fucking
you're
lie. Like,
joking, like,
nobody's
there
in that
was-
shit.
No, I'm
It was
asking.
me
I'm
on
just
X
asking the questions.
asking,
Google announced
how do I
something
get
for
access, or
defenders.
how do I join it?
Yeah, what was it?
Did you
like
get into
Gemini?
M-Dash?
Me?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
M-Dash.
Microsoft M-Dash also has been issuing press releases about helping defenders.
You're
I don't think that's a
now
club,
you're
though.
trolling them.
They don't have jackets and shit. Like, that's just like a little project. That's like a pet
Right.
project.
Right.
All right, let me just circle
You need
back
to get in a
quickly
club,
because
you know.
a thought crossed my mind while you guys were nerding out on hardware and Chinese hardware and
Dude, he's
and-
never
and going.
listening when we talk about this shit.
Mm.
I'm
By,
telling
And
you.
by the
going
way, on the
local.
topic of Chinese hardware,
Don't let me
I
forget my
s-
question, right? Don't let me
Yes,
forget my
please.
question.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
No,
I
no,
just
no, you
wanted
go.
to say
No,
very
you go ahead.
quickly.
When I get high, I forget things.
Write it down. That's why I have a fucking notebook, dude.
Go, Costin.
I saw a very interesting announcement from Xiaomi, another Chinese vendor, of a kind of NVIDIA DGX Spark killer
Mhm.
device, a cube thingy that for now is kind of a concept, which stands out because it has essentially 10 times the memory bandwidth or something along the lines, kind of rivaling the new Mac Studios in terms of memory bandwidth, and with Xiaomi saying that this is actually designed from scratch to run two models, a large model, something like 180 billion parameters, in the smaller model. So I thought that was an extremely interesting idea to design a hardware that runs two models at the same time. Again, you're going to use the small model for the quick, fast things, and you're going to use the big model for the
It
verification
also
part.
think of it as speculative decoding, right? Like they want you to be able to speed up that way. It's really fucking smart. But Ryan, what was your question?
Mm-hmm.
Come on, man.
No, I was just thinking as he's talking, I wish Intel would like double down on, or circle back on. Like, you remember Intel used to have these NUCs, these little
Yeah.
boxes that they would ship. Wish they would get back into the tiny hardware.
Intel's trying to remember how to
business.
build chips, and as soon
Hey,
as
we
they
got
figure
money
that
now.
out,
The
they're
stock
gonna-
price is climbing. The U.S. government.
Thank
give
you,
them
NVIDIA.
bailout, so there we go. The question I had was something that I have been tracking just kind of privately is Costin's $40,000 hardware cost, and every time you refresh it's this $40,000 number. Do you sense that number is starting to go down? Do you expect it to go down? And with the kind of advancements you're talking about with like Chinese hardware and so on, what is that like? What is a reasonable expectation around that hardware number, that $40,000 that you would have to invest just to do a thing?
That number is going up, not down. So
Up.
because of memory prices, hard drives, everything is going up like crazy. So what was 40,000 last time, now it's 60,000 easily.
Really, that fast?
Yeah. It's not fast. I don't think it's fast. On like it's It's definitely up. I'll give you like some random examples. DGX Spark that I used to get for 3,500 euros now is more like 45 or 5,000. Hard drives that I used to buy for 400 now they sell for 480, even 500. Like especially memory prices have exploded, and
RAM.
the RAM prices have exploded, and you see that pretty much with all the new hardware. It's actually some people are buying older hardware just in order, because older hardware is still pretty good depending on what you are getting. I mean, DDR4 for your servers, DDR4 is still pretty good stuff. If you manage to get your hands on a server with 1 terabyte of DDR4, that is like a killer server. We used to get one of those for 10K. Now I think that goes for more like 20K at the moment. And you need those for databases. You need them for all sorts of running big projects, big data, where you need big information processing.
So
So the
even with
costs
all
are
the
only going up.
advancements, the costs are still climbing, climbing,
They're
climbing.
still climbing, and I don't see it going down. Like all these memory makers, like SK Hynix, everyone is kind of saying that the production is locked for the next 2-3 years. Prices, everyone is buying in advance every single chip that they can get their hands on. And I don't see it going down. I think these little DGX Sparks will only keep, getting more and more expensive. And the new Mac studios, I don't think they are a DGX killer, at least not in my opinion. Two
Not at
DG,
that
two,
price.
no, two DGX Sparks, like from the point of view of what you're doing with them, like the models that you're running, they're still more efficient than one of the new Mac studios. There might be some narrow cases when Mac Studio with 256 gigs beats two DGX Sparks. So that justifies like the cost of another ones, but the prices, I think they will continue to go up for the next year and a half, maybe 2 years.
There's another dimension to consider there, which is um, it for a change. It's not bad to invest into hardware in the sense that the value of that hardware isn't crashing quickly. Like before, you would go and buy a computer and a graphics card, and within like 18 months, like that graphics card was like the old generation. It barely works. It's not that good. You want to move to a 4090 or whatever. Now, like I bought a DGX Spark, what, like a year ago? It's still as good a DGX Spark now as it was then. I bought an M4 Mini Pro like the Christmas before that, just on impulse. Martin Wendigenson and I like just convinced ourselves to just get fucking M4 Minis. Thank God I did. The price like fucking went through the roof. You can barely get those RAM configurations anymore. I would have killed to still get my hands on like an M3 Ultra with 512 gigabytes of RAM. That thing, which is now like 3 years old, is impossible to get and is like this, like it's gold right now. So there is this way in which like invest if you have the money and you have the interest, investing into hardware right now will not be a bad thing. It's going to keep getting more expensive. Now, the thing to keep in mind though, before you get too hot-headed on like, oh my God, I somehow need to get this resource that's gonna disappear forever, what we are seeing is that people are getting craftier. The homebrew community is getting better, and like you're getting better performance out of the existing RAM. People are getting more creative in how, like, oh, you can get this quantized model, it works just about as well, and now it's like 3 times faster overnight, just because people are doing software hacks and shit that like is really worth it. So I think is this yes, the hardware will keep getting more expensive, but are if you tell me that tomorrow everybody suddenly gets amazing performance out of like the biggest models because we got really good at quantizing, I don't see people then continuing to buy DGX Sparks like they're the last fucking, Coca-Cola in the desert, right? Like you you you're gonna be satisfied with what you got to some extent. Um, can we rant about that Chinese box you mentioned, Kostin, for like 2 seconds? Because Ryan, before when you like kind of were baiting me into like the whole like supporting China thing, my big point was going to be that given the attitude that we're getting from the frontier labs in the US, particularly Anthropic, saying that they don't support open weights, the smartest thing the Chinese could do, like the smartest thing they could do is to start dumping these Huawei chipped AI boxes, DGX Spark killers at half of the price everywhere, anywhere, because people will beat a door down to have access to those boxes if they're cheaper, if they can afford them, even if they're not the latest, greatest thing. Because if I have 3 of those in my house, I now have sovereign AI enough to like manage the cameras and like the whatever in my chatbot, my internal text messages, whatever it is. And it's not like I need 100 of those. I just need a
Yeah.
couple, right? So the
I always used to
Chinese could
think,
essentially crater this fucking, techno-feudalist economy right now if they just start pumping out those nooks, man, with some Huawei chips in them.
whenever these things pop up, I always have this thought: if the Chinese were smart, they would be doing exactly this. And then I realized the
And they're
Chinese
doing
are
that.
the
Bro,
smartest.
the
Already.
Chinese are
Trust
smart
me,
as
they are
fuck.
already fucking
They're
doing
smart as
this.
shit, and they've been playing this so well. Yeah.
And they play the long game. Listen, from episode 1 or 2 or 3 of this podcast, we were talking about Costin had brought up that the Chinese don't steal; they pay tribute to you by copying your stuff. And we talked
Absolutely.
about the Chinese thinking in generations and multiple generations while we think in election cycles. And I can't help, but that conversation keeps coming back to me as we talk about, don't make me root for China with your bullshit. Though that was my thought. Like, 2 months ago, it's like, guys, this is how you make people root for China. And here we are, you're talking about, well, they could be dumping. Not that they know anything about price dumping things anyway.
Yeah.
And not that they're not brilliant and play this long game. So we'll see how all of that plays out. You got a closing thought, Costin, on the hardware piece?
On the hardware piece, I think it's also interesting that NVIDIA is kind of pushing a different kind of beast here, the DGX station. If the DGX Spark is in the range of, let's say, 4K, the DGX station is in the range of 80K,
What's the
80,000
difference?
US dollars.
What is the
Yes.
station?
The station essentially gives you a lot more memory and a lot more memory bandwidth, like 760 gigs of RAM that would allow you
It's
to
like a
run
server
bigger
form
mod.
factor.
It's
It's like a
yeah, it's like a
supercomputer.
desktop,
It's like
like a desktop supercomputer. So that one is an extremely interesting device because obviously it's not designed for data centers like their highly optimized cards or pods, but that is something they want companies to buy for employees. Like it would not be sitting in a data center. So
I
that
want
is
to buy
like
one.
That's the
you want
edge
to buy
device
one,
that's
right?
next to your desk.
I want to
right?
buy
Yeah.
one. I would buy that shit.
So if you know like these people who are into cars and like I don't know, the entry point is maybe like a pre-owned BMW and they're like enjoy it, and like the next stage is I don't know a
Trading in your
fine-tuned
BMW for a
Porsche. And like the next, it's like it's an addiction, all right? So like in the DGX Spark disease addiction, what is the next stage is the DGX station at 80K.
When does it get illegal to own it? Right,
Soon,
that also,
soon.
That's also coming.
Nah,
Someone
man.
mentioned Astra earlier. I think we heard from Sama 2-3 weeks ago that things had been paused for 2 weeks. Do we know when Astra is expected to come? What is the latest on like the newest and greatest coming out of the labs? What do we know?
We don't. We know that they slowed things down, and
That's the
then
last
there's
word?
been discussions of like limited access for Astra, but they're being very careful about it. And we saw a public posting about like more specifically about like the level of cyber risk that's being discussed with Astra, which like to be less hypey, to be a little deflationary, I think it's okay to say that like there's a clear standard that we set with the Frontier Risk Council from early on, the beginning of the year, which was that like the cyber risk, like the index, like the sort of breaking point that OpenAI was like mindful of was one where there was a combination of an alignment, like a visible alignment issue, that it would choose to do things in a way that increases cyber risk, and that the same model has the ability to autonomously exploit systems, like have create net new unique 0-day exploits for whatever bullshit it was dealing with. And Astra is the first model that essentially has crossed both of those with the Hugging Face, situation and so on. That's what we're being told sort of publicly up until this point. So they're treating the release in a slightly different way, and it's up to all of us to just sort of wait and see. But I'm excited. I mean, 5.6 Sol is my daily driver right now, so I'm
When do
all
these things
for
start?
something bigger and better.
When do these things start fixing diabetes? Like, why is these
They
things
are.
all the Astras
They
and all?
are.
Okay.
They are, dude.
All
Like,
I'm hearing about is cyber and
yeah,
and how
because
much
we're
you
in a
can hack
cyber
things.
podcast and we don't know jack
No,
shit
no, no.
about medicine, bro.
I
I
don't
don't
see
know
a Sama
anything.
tweet. I don't
I
see a
haven't had
Sama tweet
water in
about.
fucking months. Like, I'm
But you
not
get the
the
point
right
I'm
person
making.
for this.
Like the
Yeah.
frontier labs are still using cyber as like the big messaging point, and people like me hoping that AI transforms the world in a much more positive
So
way. Go help with the healthcare. Go help here.
you
Go help here.
you
We're
need
not
to
hearing
pay
those stories. Am
more.
I?
So you need to pay more attention. Sorry, let me put that differently. I don't want to put the blame on you. It's the problem is that we're listening to what's going into the mainstream news about AI. And if we went a little out of our way, there's a lot of cool shit being discussed in like medical circles and folks actually working in physics and these other things where they're like, holy shit, we just discovered this thing. Holy shit, we just solved this problem. Holy shit, it just did this thing. But and those stories are there. They're being drowned out because cyber right now is the greater vehicle for regulatory capture. It's getting them news cycles, it's getting them conversations with the administration. Everybody's talking about how dangerous these things are, which is an amazing way of crediting them as successes for what they've
And
been
major health
building.
advances wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't.
Yo, we don't even have
I'm
healthcare,
so jaded
Ryan.
on the
Like,
whole thing. I'm so jaded on the whole thing. Like you're spending all your marketing and storytelling cycles to talk about Operation Daybreak
bro,
and this, and Nexus is held
people
up
don't
because of
care.
this. Is Astra is not coming because of cyber and cyber. And you're telling me there's amazing medical success stories that are happening. They
There
have
are.
access to it, and nobody's telling me these stories, and you
But
blame me for not going and finding them.
But Ryan, just
Uh,
because they discover the cure for cancer doesn't mean anyone's going to be able to afford it. So like you
eh.
have to
Give
understand
me
that like
hope. Give me
it's
hope
like
that your fucking that your data centers are going to be used in some
look, it's
positive
like
way
it's
outside of.
sci-fi shit. To most people, us being able to say, "Hey, you can live for 400 years now." It's like, "Oh, please no. Please God no." Right? Like that's not the experience. Now, I agree with you and you should go look, this is one reason that I did stand DeepMind very heavily before Sundar, I guess, decided to kill it. But if you watch The Thinking Game, which was a
I'm
lovely
rooting for Google, by the
documentary,
way.
well, not I don't know, whatever. But like if you watch The Thinking Game, it was a lot about the different projects that DeepMind was engaged in that were about, protein folding and all these other like medical advancements and all these different things. They were doing the mission that I think, Ryan, you've wanted to them to do. And to be fair, Demis Hassabis moving up from CEO to, I guess, resting in heaven as a chair of some sort, is supposed to be also focusing more on his startup, which is about those things. Like, if you want to stand any like creature, like any person in this drama as like somebody who's focused on the thing you care about, it's Demis Hassabis, period. Full stop. He's the only person that's done a thing where it's like they could have tried to like use this as a monopolistic advantage. The protein folding thing is like one of the major discoveries of like humanity, and they found it and they gave it away for free fully for the medical community. Like they did the thing you want them to do, and that's why he got a Nobel Prize, right? So like that's your dude. Everyone else, I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but that's your guy,
By the way,
right?
Yeah, do you remember this company Midjourney that was doing like early
Yeah.
images,
Yeah.
AI images? They've
Oh,
actually
you saw the scans?
pivoted. They have pivoted to like Midjourney Medical, like a new
Shit
division
got
that's
weird.
developing a full body ultrasonic scanner to do like MRIs for less than
Shit
in
got
60
weird.
seconds for the cost of like, and that's what I like. Get me excited about that shit. I'll stand all your AI frontier labs if you could get me excited about this stuff. This
Dude,
stuff
the
is more
craziest
meaningful
part.
shit. I don't give a fuck about your 0 days and your exploits. I really don't. Honest to God, I don't.
I mean, I don't give a fuck about your 0 days and your exploits either, to be honest. But like, look, shit got weird. That Mid-Journey thing is like one of those moments where I just sat there and I was like, I no longer possess the ability of discernment to know if this shit is like an
If
April
they're
Fool's
trolling, if it's
joke,
April Fool's
if
shit,
they're
yes, exactly.
trolling, if they really pivoted, if they're scamming us, right? Like you're like, yo, is this a rug pull that they use
It
their
is very much
amazing,
like a blood test
right?
thing,
Like,
right? Like, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
like, dude, and they have all these like people speaking to it, scientists, and I'm like, oh, thank God. I hope these people are telling the truth because like I have what
I root for
possible
that all day.
thing could I
Yeah.
latch on to assume whether this is true or not? I do not know, man. Like I do
This
not
might be a
know.
good point to call to action. If any of the listeners, there's Spotify commenters that always got some smart thing to say. Like if you find some of this medical usage, medical AI advancements in medicine, in any
Give
sort
Ryan
of thing,
hope.
healthcare and so on, send them to me. Please send them to me so we could amplify them on this show. I'm sick of talking about fucking mythos and
Yo,
zero
you know those
days.
people are on Twitter, right? Like there are those doctors are on Twitter. There are people that are working on medical research shit on Twitter, and
There you go.
dude,
Send them to
those
me.
people are excited. They are excited the same way that I'm excited about these things and like reversing, man. Like it's helping all over the place, but it's not going to change the dynamics of what you're seeing around you for
Where's the open
entirely
letter?
different
Where's the other
reasons.
non-cyber open letter? If it doesn't have a pledge, it doesn't exist. Costin, let's pivot quickly to Lumen Technologies announcing, publishing on this Quartermaster China Nexus state enabling model alongside an FBI Justice Department affidavit charging, doing the attribution on the Chinese company or the Chinese mercenary firm that was caught doing work for the Chinese government. There's two things here. One is the legal document and the legal case with the attribution, and one is a technical report from Lumen. Let's start with Lumen. Did you learn anything there? Did they give us anything there to go hunting? Their IOX, what is the state on the Lumen report?
So there's a couple of reports with IOCs, which is, as you probably know, my middle name. I'm like Costin IOCs, right? So there's a bunch of IOCs in the Lumen report. There's also like an interesting, I don't know if it's an Easter egg or something, but I'm one of the guys who checks everything with these reports. And at the end, they say review these IOCs and visit our GitHub page that we update continuously, and they have a link to a Quartermaster IOCs on GitHub, which is empty at the moment. I don't know if it's a
text
mistake.
file that is empty.
It is empty, yeah. So hopefully it will have more stuff in it soon. I think it was created about 2 months ago, and hopefully they'll fill it with more goodies. It's a very cool, it's a very interesting report as we learn more and more what is the state of the art of OPSEC nowadays for APTs. And it kind of leans in the direction of ORB networks. If you're one of these high-end APTs, you gotta either own or operate through one of these ORB networks.
Get you an orb.
Back up
Get
for
you an
30 seconds
orb.
and tell the audience what an orb is.
Like this is the intelligence community name for a VPN, which is very sophisticatedly called the operational relay box. So it's an orb. Now these orb networks, they typically kind of include all sorts of exit points. So they can have, let's say, hacked routers. They can have hardware that has been sold pre-compromised. They can have commercial VPNs included in it. So they can typically have all sorts of things. And the way is, of course, how to run something like that reliably over long periods of times and kind of refresh them from time to time. The first, I think, the first real mention of an orb network is one of the Snowden documents, actually, where the Five Eyes, in particular Canada and the US, I think they're discussing refreshing their orb network, and their orb network is built from routers running kind of vulnerable versions or intercepted credentials through their mass interception capabilities, or routers they know they're vulnerable to specific exploits because they run very old firmware. And in those documents they talk about doing like a once per year event in which they kind of refresh their operational relay boxes networks. And this has been kind of adapted by pretty much all high-end APTs nowadays. I think it was an interesting moment when we saw Cloud Atlas using Orb networks back in the days. That was an interesting event. And nowadays, the Chinese are kind of the champions of these Orb networks from many points of view, both in terms of size, aggressivity, how they do it at scale with multiple so-called quartermasters serving different APTs. So this is what
Private
makes
sector
attribution.
companies, like mercenary type
Yeah,
companies.
mercenaries, which sell access to
Some of them.
their VPNs or
Yeah.
networks.
Some of them are private companies, not all of them.
Some are private, right? It's interesting, of course. The whole Chinese business ecosystem, what is it, like the Guangxi or Guangxi, how they call these friendship-based relationships in China is super, super interesting. And with quartermasters essentially serving multiple APTs that make attribution very difficult. So let's say you have this IP address that you see the APTs poking your infrastructure, and you're saying, so I have maybe APT3 poking me from this IP address, and then you see someone else poking from the same IP, but it's not APT3 anymore. It's a different group. And then like you cannot use them reliably for attribution purposes. But sometimes the good news is that everything coming out of that IP is a customer of the quartermaster. The only issue is how to differentiate between them. And this is what we have here. One of these beautiful orb networks. Fast Labyrinth is like one of the internal code names. By the way, I have to say that maintaining something like this is an incredibly painful process. Like for the people out there who have been doing like web crawlers or like malware crawlers, or having to use SOX proxies for OPSEC reasons to access, I don't know, cyber criminal forums and the likes, they know how difficult. I think back at our old job, we had a guy who was fully responsible for developing and maintaining the VPNs that all the systems essentially use, like to detonate, for instance, malware samples. You want to give them sandboxes internet access, then the access has to go through an anonymization infrastructure. Otherwise, they'll fingerprint you and they know it's you doing that sandbox execution. So it's very, very hard to run orb networks reliably. And this is one of those where like shutdown of fast labyrinths will have, I think, a significant impact on some APTs.
I was just going to ask, we talk about disrupting these orb networks. Is it really effective, or is it just kind of like you're just creating like small roadblocks that they jump over? Sorry, Juanito, you can go.
No, I was going to say, to Costin's point, like it's hard to run one of these anonymization networks when you have to follow the law. The real issue with the reason the Chinese are like pole vaulting over everybody and doing this is they don't give a fuck about the law, so they're popping residential proxies and like routers and cameras and all the so like the orb starts with like certain kinds of devices, and then it goes into like servers in one cloud, and then it goes into like REST proxies in some country, and then it goes into another cloud, and then it pops out in your country, and like it's fucking impossible to deal with the jurisdictional nightmare. And that's what makes them so amazing. Sorry, Ryan, you had asked a question.
No,
Kind
I
of
was
moved us
just
a bit
like, what is
backwards.
are these things effective at all? Like, are these takedowns just whack-a-mole? Is this like Costin says, it adds a significant bit of friction for the adversary, but is it really effective?
It's important to do. We should do more of it. They would be more effective the more we do them. I think the big issue is that these things are done like once in a blue moon and we celebrate. But really, what that does, unless you got all the way up the stack, like of the operational stack, and essentially disturb this network further and further up, you're kind of cutting tentacles and they're growing back after a bit, right? Like when it's somebody's business to provide this service, yes, you inconvenience them and it's going to take time. It's not nothing. But like, unless you get all the way up, they're going to rebuild in some relative amount of time. However, the more this happens, the harder their lives get. Right. So, like, especially when you're talking about like these categorical takedowns, like, one of the reasons that I've been kind of trying to be spicy in some ways, but I really believe this. Like I've been advocating for BrickerBot, like for us to essentially brick vulnerable devices that are left astray on the internet, because I think there's like this is where you see what a massive amount of latent vulnerability does. Right? Like you leave all these devices hanging around, you're like, well, it's not a big deal. It's just a bunch of bullshit cameras. And it's like, yeah, but they're a part of like a fucking tunnel that is basically terrorizing half of the internet, and like we're just leaving it as a thing that's there, so when we do a takedown and they lose a bunch of visibility, they lose a bunch of devices, there's 40,000 other cameras or 50,000 other routers or 30,000 other phones. You're like, this is why we need to get this shit off the internet and force vendors to have to produce something better, even if it means having to do controlled burns ourselves, because they're fueling bullshit like this.
Shout out to our friends at Lumen Black Lotus Labs. Those guys continue to do amazing
Fuck yeah.
work.
Keep
Shout out to
pushing
those guys for the
amazing
IOX
stuff.
as well. Pushing amazing
Yeah.
stuff all the time. And this is a good time to call out. I want to flag Mike Horka is coming to LABScon to do a talk about tracking Volt Typhoon's quote-unquote silent train, which is an ORB network that's impossible to track because it's ephemeral and they're kind of like creating it and discarding them. So he's got like an amazing
no
LABScon
spoilers,
talk.
man.
I don't know why we're teasing this shit, but
No
it's in the
spoilers.
description. It's in the public description. I mean, I'm just reading the abstract and saying that's one of the talks.
Now you're just fucking with people
because
because this shit's sold out. So I don't. You're just fucking with them. You're like, it's gonna be a great talk.
When
Like, yeah.
when are we gonna get a live stream from LABScon?
Never.
Never.
Never. You
Shout
have to
out to
be
Mike
there,
Horka
bro.
and all our friends over there doing amazing work. Keep shipping these papers. We love getting
More
to read them.
orbs.
The
Yes, please.
FBI attribution is helpful. How, Costin? Like, what are you as a defender doing with the FBI attribution bit and the legal case or all of that? Is that interesting to you at all?
Barely, in the sense that, yeah, sure, it's interesting to know more about how all this operates. I mean, people going to different private events, conferences like LABScon, they generally learn a lot more about the companies involved in the ORB networks and quartermastering and so on and so on. What is interesting to remember here is the method
Put that
by
packet away
which
from the microphone.
the
It's fucking
method
eating
by
right into the microphone. Sorry, Costin.
Let him talk. Let him talk.
You're just
I
scratching my
have snacks as well. I can use snacks as well.
White peach mochi.
What time is it there?
Choco Belgian style.
1:50 in the morning.
It's almost 2 in the morning for you. All right. 4-hour episode.
It's fine,
Here
bro.
we go.
4-hour
Yes, that
episode.
is,
Go pee, man.
very
Go pee.
very quickly, what I was saying before I forget is the method by which the takedown was executed. They took over the CNC, command and control domains, that they were using for coordination between this infrastructure, between this ORB operational relay boxes, so ORBs. And what does it mean? It means that those individual boxes didn't somehow necessarily get cleaned. They just took over the infrastructure. Would be very interesting if they would be doing something extra, because I mean, if these were compromised through vulnerabilities, they can just recompromise them with a different version that uses a different CNC infrastructure, and we are back to normal, our usual broadcast by Monday. So I thought this was
You're talking
interesting.
about pushing some code to fix something, or pushing some code to
Yeah,
break
that is
something.
Bricker
the
bot.
that is the interest,
Bricker
the
bot.
breaker bot, like maybe the
Bricker
cleaning
bot.
There
bot.
are
I don't
multiple
know.
public examples of that being done, including by the
Oh,
FBI
sure.
and Lumen and these guys
Oh yeah.
doing this
Dude,
kind of
when a
botneting.
car breaks down on the highway and it's left
Drag it
there
to the
to
side of the
rust,
road, right?
they drag it
Yes.
to the side of the road. They don't leave it there to fucking let other cars crash into it.
Mm.
Yeah, but we gotta get to a point where they have an alternative to getting something more secure
Well, but
and
that's
more
the
safe.
thing, though.
And
It's the
they
other
don't.
way, Ryan. It's the other way around. You have to do this so that alternatives can thrive. Because right now, if you and I decide we're going to build an amazing home router company and our routers cost $200,
And
no one
TP-Link
is
sells
going
for
to
12
buy that
bucks, yeah.
shit because the other ones sell for $12 and no one can tell the difference. The day those things all shut down and then you go buy another one and they all shut down, you're not going to go buy the same piece of shit again, right? You're going to look for something else.
Now you're starting to talk like a capitalist again. I love it.
Come on. The free market will solve everything. Anyways, one spicy take, since we were talking about orbs, and shout out to Michael Raggi for coining the term. But also, I think it's kind of clever in some ways, right? Because like orbs were a thing people discussed even like in the days of like Turla satellite command infrastructure and stuff like that. But uh there's sorry, someone just put something in the chat. I've never seen it pop up like that. I just like
Hey,
completely got lost.
like, tell us what
But
did they put
well,
in the chat?
the spicy no. So I think what is it? I have to get my car inspected every year before I can renew my registration to make sure it's not polluting the environment.
Yeah.
That's right, Cyber Dad.
So is that a call for like all these orb routers, these shitty routers, to check in somewhere and validate they're clean before they're allowed to?
The thing with the dumping, right? Like they're dumping these devices on us, and like the really terrible part is like the software compatibility of it all. At the end of the day, if it's a piece of shit plastic hardware but it works, and I could flash like a standard of like a relatively secure piece of software on it, unless we're talking about like embedded God knows what problems, which would be a different issue. At least the software end would all be managed in some way that we're all comfortable with, right? Anyway, so okay, spicy take. Quick question, Costin. You know how like we were told that, after the Snowden leaks, other countries were studying and poring over the documents and like they learned shit from there and they raised their tradecraft in ways that they adapted and learned from the Snowden leaks. I've always been curious if there's anything visible from that genuinely, right? Like, and you could say maybe certain malware techniques and maybe whatever, but then, I also think that there's always been like a lot of hyperbole around this. However, this orb shit is how we would see the equation group and other APTs consistently operating. And yes, there's always been some anonymization network techniques in general that were used, like Hacking Team and other folks. But the Chinese have gone full fucking bore on this. Like, it's like tradecraft across the board became like this network sensitive thing. And also, this, memory traipsing and whatnot. But most importantly, the thing that's killing everybody is you now have like 25 fucking orb networks. And whenever they're attacking your country, they're coming out of a residential proxy in your country that you can't even monitor, right? You don't even have like the legal remit to monitor that shit, right? So I don't think the Chinese just like overnight decided like, yo, this is a cool thing we should maybe do, guys. Like, I don't think it's just
They
like,
learned from the best.
I think they learned, like, there are few examples of them learning from the best in like a way that we could maybe quantify. But I'm very curious if we, to what extent you can see a coordinated shift, a decision that came in a centralized fashion where they were like, from this point forward, we need everybody on some kind of, if not multiple anonymization networks. And these MSS guys, hey, you're gonna run your own orbs. Like I don't even want you using like the same shit as everybody else. And like here's 7 different companies that have been seeded around the country that are just going to maintain different orb networks and like all this shit. Because that's the scale of effort that we've seen over the past like 4 years, maybe 5, that like is now just like plaguing us. And I'm curious if it, maybe it's just like a way to make this a little overly spicy, but you do wonder what gets an entire country's worth of APTs to suddenly change their tune and the way that they do things fundamentally and consistently.
No, here's how I think it works. I don't have any proof, so it's just my own speculation, my own feeling. But as we already know, the orb people, they have their own little orb conferences, just the same way we go to LABScon, we go to PivotCon, State of Statecraft, Virus Bulletin, and so on. They go to, I don't know, OrbCon Shanghai, OrbCon Tianjin, and so on and so on. Guangdong. And I would assume that everyone going to these conferences, just like we do, it comes back with some notes from the talks. And at some of those conferences, there's people going through leaks, there's people going through malware they find, there's people running honeypots and sharing their experiences with running those honeypots. And everyone is kind of taking notes, and then at the end of the year you draw your own conclusions. What do we need to change? What are the best practices? What are the top teams out there doing? So it's not necessarily a change that happens at the same moment everywhere, but it's something that over time certain techniques are better than others. So some kind of stand the test of time, which would be the orb netter. So you go to these conferences and you read about maybe Snowden docs, but not necessarily those, but then you read about Cloud Atlas, and there's people talking about other things. And you start wondering, hey, we need something like that. Hey, that would be cool to have. It would be like really interesting to have a botnet that we could operate ourselves and kind of anonymize connections in a way which is untraceable, even to like the big guys out there, the NSA and their friends. The tracing net flow across Chinese, Korean, Taiwanese networks, Asian networks is extremely difficult. So at some point, everyone is starting to buzz about orb netters the same way we are buzzing about both orb netters at the moment. And there's like more and more moving into that direction. And I think the reason why everyone is so excited on both sides about them is because they simply work. They are effective. They are like, let's say, reasonably cheap, and they can be made stable operationally. And as a result, this kind of protects you. It's a good attribution deflection. You see that who is in the news? It's essentially these guys who are running the orb network, not the APT groups who are actually behind them. So I was like very carefully looking through all these documents to see if they actually talk about who are the customers of these guys.
They talk about the MSS and they talk
They
about...
do.
But they
There's
don't
like
identify specific groups, right?
they don't say like it was APT 40X, it was like that or this
Do
or
they
that
know?
typhoon. Some people know some of these things. They don't have names, I guess. They are like in the UNC category. Some of them may have names. Like they talk about, of course, this iSoon that also had contracts with Unit 9086, but I don't see any of the big names getting dropped in here, which is a proof that the orb networks work. Otherwise, we were seeing indictments for the customers of these orb companies.
I
Interesting.
mean, that's part of the difficulty, right? Like you have, 6 different groups coming out of an orb network, and like it's 4 APTs and then 2 criminal groups and then one God knows what the fuck it is. And it all sort of like blends. That's why there's been, I think, the proliferation of UNCs, I'm guessing, in large part came
It's
from
related to this, yeah.
that, right? Like the temps and the unks. Like there was a moment when the old mappings, like, yeah, you have them, but you're seeing stuff and it kind of looks like these guys, but the same, the same points are also bringing you this other APT. And like, are they working together? Are they like, it's been a fucking nightmare. It's why, if you go back in this podcast for years now, I've been saying, I respect the Chinese APT ecosystem. I respect the people who understand it, but I don't fucking understand it. Like, I can't sit here and like the way that we look at like Russian ops or like whatever other ops, and we sit there and we draw this little map in our heads and we're like, these guys are this and these guys are that. Like, it is possible to track the Chinese APT ecosystem, but it is a type of scholarship in and of itself. Like, it takes a full level of dedication, and there's like 12 people that I know who are all friends, and they're the people that track Chinese APTs like for real, that actually know like this group does this and they're connected to that and they're part of this organization. But it has become, I mean, shout out to those people. Like it takes a lot of,
Shout out to Dakota as well. I
acumen.
think Dakota's been tracking some of this
Yeah,
private
for sure.
sector use in
Yeah.
offensive operations. He's got some previous work he had published. We talked about that
Yeah.
previously in the podcast.
Eugenio, Benincasa, Dakota Carey. There's a lot of folks that are sort of very into this.
There's a lot of the last thought on the orb network stuff. Does the guys
Fucking
at Black
orbs.
Lotus Lab have some special type of visibility that gives them this access to write these things? And why aren't we, if the orb networks are becoming such a key crucial part like we just discussed, why aren't we getting more reports from more places? And where else should we be expecting to get reports from? I know they sit in they have access to some part of the backbone in some way. Lumen used to be the old what? Remind me what Lumen was.
So the reason that
CenturyLink.
Lumen has such amazing visibility into a lot of these things is they have an amazing research team, and they used to be CenturyLink, which means like they own a lot of the wires connecting a lot of places around the world, like the big wires, right? So you get,
The real
you know,
plumbing, yeah.
yeah, like a lot of, other folks that sell you NetFlow, like they sell you things from like these little hot points and like places where you can kind of grab certain bundles of information, but the internet, it doesn't route in a consistent way, and it doesn't route in the path of least resistance or like the most obvious path. So like you'll see NetFlow from certain providers and it's like very spotty. Like you see bits and pieces here, but like you can never talk with certainty. It's very different when you own the wires. It's very different when you're in an ISP and stuff like that. And you're like, or a certain backbone, like you can see other types of things and you can do data science on those sets because there is a level of like completion, at least to some degree, and predictability and volume and all these greater metrics that you have. So you've got an amazing team of folks with Danny Adamitis and Michael Horka and Ryan English and so on that they're really making hay of that visibility and doing good things with it. When you ask about other people providing reports, like look, there's great private reporting on this from folks like PwC, Alison Wyckoff and Chris McConkey's team. Like they've done great stuff on was it Super Jumper and others. And then like the big issue here is you need to have a certain level of visibility to be able to do any of that. And then when you have it, you have to have a willingness to actually do the work and invest into it. And that's where you kind of look at the cloud companies and you look at them a little sideways, because you should expect to see more visibility in this, but some of the folks that can see that prefer to sell that sort of under the table in their own way. And then some of these other folks are just not, really investing into doing that kind of security. Other things are percolating to the rest of the security industry, the way
What's
that
the
you
name
would
of our
expect.
guy at AWS? Our CISO guy at AWS.
Fuck.
Moses.
No. Yeah.
Moses,
CJ Moses.
Come on,
The
CJ. You
hardest
got some
working man
visibility to share with us.
in
No,
threat
that's what you're talking
intels.
about, like the threat intel teams at the big cloud providers. Like Cloudflare as well, I think would have some visibility into some aspect of it as well.
Maybe,
I don't know. I'm just
but
curious to see beyond Black Lotus Labs, who should we be looking to like
well,
educating us on orbs?
look, you got to look at sort of what the clouds are that are supporting some of this infrastructure. The ISPs are in a position to see great things, and we never get reports from the ISPs themselves into sort of where some of these things are going. There's smaller cloud companies that have a great deal of visibility into some of these things, and then who would be the remaining force? I mean, some of the NetFlow
Cisco,
providers and
Palo,
stuff,
some of those guys as well. Some of
there's
the
visibility
switching
all
and
over the
routing
place. It's
guys.
hard
Yeah.
to put these things together in certain ways, but there's good work being done on it. Oh, sorry.
Right.
One point that you mentioned Cloudflare. I actually don't think Cloudflare would have a great deal of visibility into this
Okay.
because I don't think most of these orb networks are trying to run through Cloudflare. Like, it's very easy for Cloudflare, which is a much more engaged company, to just shut your shit down categorically. They're very responsive. Their threat intel team is on it. Not to sort of besmirch, because I'm sure they'd love the visibility, but like, I don't look sideways at Cloudflare because I would be surprised if a lot of this stuff is going through their network.
Sounds good. Anything else to add, Costin? Last word on orbs?
On orbs, I think there's a connected story we have in our briefing doc that I find fascinating, which is this ZBT routers shipping with factory embedded backdoors.
The vuln check thing.
Yes. This for me is a fascinating story.
This is a report. Let me just set it up very
Yes.
quickly. It's a report from a company called Volncheck, a startup here in the United States, about Chinese implants in the supply chain. Shout out to Jacob Baines, the publisher of the report. Jacob
LABScon
talks about him.
sponsors.
Absolutely. He referenced a previous publication on called Endless Doors, and they wanted to talk about the ZBT supply chain in there. Tracking FCC filings, patent records, web pages, and so on. Gets down to finding two implants on the device, one called Speaking Stone and the other one called Dark Lantern, a backdoor that listens. No authentication required, both written in NIM, both communicate over UDP, both are launched by the same binary, a connectivity watchdog called Inet Detect. Why are you connecting this to the Orb network scenery?
So, like, first of all, it's a fascinating story from so many points of view. On one hand, like, these things are like super cheap routers you can buy, let's say, off Amazon, right? And anyone can have them in their homes. And these kind of backdoors, actually, I think they're the perfect placeholder for deploying orb networks on top of these devices, so they can.
Certified pre-owned.
Yes, like certified pre-owned with the backdoor, and it's awesome to see like both methods being deployed. One is like this passive backdoor, the other one is the active backdoor. And to me, what is fascinating is they were saying, for instance, in case of the Speaking Stone backdoor, they observed like 392 unique devices, infected devices, if you want, of which 390 were
All
in China.
Yeah.
Which is again fascinating. And they also say like it would be very interesting to understand who put the backdoor in there. Where does this like backdoor originate from? And I would assume that several theories can be here on the table. If all the routers are in China, who has an interest to backdoor things in China? So that can be one interesting avenue. The other one can be
conspiracy Costin fly.
no, but it sounds interesting, right?
It is.
And for what reason would you put them if they're being mostly sold in China? To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed the number is not in the thousands or tens of thousands. It's like we're talking about 100 of these devices.
True, it looks very targeted, right? It looks very like almost on too small a scale.
I'd be like very curious what Lumen is seeing when it comes to UDP port 9992 that Dark Lantern uses as a passive backdoor. So it would be like super interesting to see who is scanning for that port, who is scanning now. Like I would assume that all security companies are now poking the internet, maybe Silas, friends, I don't know, might be looking around to see which devices have this Dark Lantern on it. And similarly, like looking for the passive DNS traffic to the C2 built-in speaking stone would be also very, very interesting. And the question is, how many others have built-in backdoors like smart TVs and so on? By the way, there's some amazing research being done by our friend Alex Turing at Tianjin. He constantly publishes on these kind of things that I find fascinating. The kind of hard coded backdoors in smart TVs, and he mostly talks about the interesting implants that they find either from Chinese cyber criminals. I think we don't see a lot of stories nowadays, maybe just few, very few stories about Chinese cyber criminals developing malware, deploying worm networks, and the likes. Because we saw what happened in Russia nowadays. In Russia, there's kind of the cutting edge of cyber criminal and nation state sponsored cooperation. While in China, it's maybe not something that obvious. It's more business like. There's like companies, business contracts, not criminals who are financially motivated working by themselves, like Chucky, who was running maybe league base, being arrested by the FSB and the likes. So that's why I find it it's a fascinating story. There's
The one
something
check.
here. My intuition tells me that this story this story, there's something about the ZBT routers shipping with the dark lantern and speaking stone.
The report does not establish any sort of Chinese government control here or some sort of like official embed. And it also doesn't confirm like malicious use against victim. It's just discovery of these two things. In the case of the Dark Lantern systems, they said they identified 203 internet-facing Dark Lantern systems in 22 countries, self-reporting 16 models. We don't know what exactly the models are either, right?
They list the models actually. They're listed there on the site, all the specific, including some unknown vendors that are shipping like probably compatible OEM hardware compatible with the ZBT. I think it's fully like worth of your attention. Giving a look at this blog, they have Yara rules. They have a minimal scanner, internet scanners, North Suricata rules, and hashes.
Interesting.
Mm.
Check out the Von Check blog. I'll post a link in the show description. Juanito, anything to add to this at all?
I mean, this is a topic that I'm actually really interested in. Moreover, that's like my plan tomorrow is actually to go to Akihabara and just try to buy as many Chinese phones as I can get
Phones.
my hands on. Like seriously, I was already working on the Oppo Fold N5, which I'd gotten in Singapore. I think when Costin and we were like hung out there, maybe not last year, but the year before for Black Hat Asia. And at the time, I found it really frustrating because it was a beautiful piece of hardware, like unbelievably nice folding phone, great screen, great cameras, but super locked down to this Color OS 15, which is, I guess, some Android variant, but very interestingly locked down. So Oppo is like a Huawei offshoot that they sell globally. There's a couple of those. There's another one called Honor, and they make these beautiful pieces of hardware and they sell them to the global market. But what's interesting is the software, like they have these nice skinned versions of Android, but it also has like a bunch of protected regions and things in the bootloader that you cannot inspect. You cannot see, you can't pull it out. And like if you try to pull the firmware, like an image from the internet, it doesn't contain those parts. Those are only in the hardware of the phone. So I was really frustrated. I considered actually like physically opening the device to try to short some pins to try to get in there. And the truth is that I'm just not the right person to do that. I was going to destroy this beautiful thing and not really get anything out of it. But now that we have 5.6 Soul Cyber, I let that shit loose. I don't know how much I spent on tokens, but that motherfucker like burned for, I want to say it was like 16 hours or 26 hours. found, implemented a local exploit, fucking got everything out of this thing. So now I have like a ton of stuff to analyze. But this is a project I'm really interested in carrying out with a lot more of these phones, where it's like really desirable, lovely hardware. Like we even have that video of like Nicolas Maduro while he was still, the leader of Venezuela before we yoinked him unceremoniously, showing off a Huawei phone that Xi Jinping had given him and how cool it is. And like you're just sitting there like in disbelief that a head of state would just take a fucking device and be like, oh, how cool this fucking thing is. But they're marketing
Wait till they
that
start dumping
globally.
the Huawei hardware on their AI systems.
They're everywhere. Ryan, it's already everywhere except the US. When you land in London, the signs on Heathrow are for Honor phones. And they're these beautiful pieces of fucking hardware. You can find things now. That's why I pushed everyone to this like Apple in China book so much last year. You see things that are just not available in the US market at all. Right now, they're moving on to the Huawei, I think it's like XT2 or whatever, the Huawei Mate XT2. It's a triple folding tablet. Like it's a phone, like this nice little phone, and then it unfolds twice, two different hinges, and turns into a full-size tablet. This is the second generation of that. We have nothing like it in the US.
Apple
And this
next
is
week
the-
is announcing a folding phone in
Yes,
September
it
7th.
will
You're going to
fold
be first in
one
line to
time.
buy it.
It will
Yeah,
be
but you're going to be the first in line to
unfold
buy
one
it.
time. I will buy it. I will literally be in the first shipment.
It doesn't have Face ID. We have to go back to using our fingerprints.
I'm actually
Did you notice?
glad. Fuck Face ID. I'm fine with Touch ID. Touch ID was phenomenal. I'm glad we're going back to Touch ID. But yeah, no, it'll be a lesser
We're
product.
getting
in some
one
ways.
fold. Can we fucking get one fold at a time?
Just one fucking fold. Yeah. I'm very excited for our arriving at this eventually. But in any case, like, look, there's a whole this is the high end version of what Costin was discussing with these routers, right? Like, you're telling me that like the majority of the world market, excluding the US, is buying these. Like the wealthy people of the rest of the planet that don't get iPhones are buying these glorious looking Chinese phones. And they have a fuck ton of stuff running on them that no one can inspect. I find that fascinating. I think it takes an amazing level of trust to say that that's acceptable for the rest of the world. And if they don't have the time to inspect it, they don't have the exploits to inspect it, I've got the tokens to at least be like, here, go on, do some cool shit.
You talk London and so on. Costin has been reminding us on this podcast even with the EV space, electric cars and so on, what's happening in Romania is just so like obvious compared to where we are. Where it feels like we're being left behind, and not a lot of us realize it. We talk about, it makes me root for China, and not understanding that China is leaps and bounds ahead.
Well,
so many
the only reason we're rooting for China at all is that like American companies are acting like the villains in a way that like it's stingy. It's not cool, right? Like it's not cool to want people to be dependent on you for their like everything in their lives. Like that's a parasitic thing to do. They can be rich, they can be wealthy beyond their dreams without being predatory. That's the thing about this right now, where it's like, look, you don't need the entire cake. You can have the majority of it and still be half decent to the people around you. I don't know why we're having these conversations in this way, but it does make people root for literally anybody else, including the Chinese.
Yeah. Listen, you go to Guyana, the Chinese are building all the roads, all the bridges, all the hospitals, all the schools. And when you have conversations with people there, you know what they say? Why is China the boogeyman? What did China do to me?
Yeah,
like,
because
I take
they're
on
not
your problems.
Because Guyana only just got on that freemium train, and they're not yet at the point where those loans get called in. I point you to Venezuela and Ecuador and some of these other places
I'm just
where
giving
like
you the reality on the ground.
I
That
understand,
you're not building
and
a bridge for me, bro. What the fuck am I supposed to do?
I'm not telling you that they should be thinking about the America fondly or anything like that. All I'm saying is You guys are only just coming to this. You're in the honeymoon phase. I want to point you to the places in South America that took basically bajillions in infrastructure build out and investment from Chinese companies. And yeah, they got a bunch of cool shit built, but then you realize 10 years later that all of your national resources have been tapped for 25 to 30 years in advance and given to China, and they're not going to forgive you for the debt, right?
I
So
know.
it's a different strategy.
I still need my bridges and my hospitals built by someone because I can't afford to build it myself. I mean, that's the raw reality on the ground. Costin, last thoughts on?
Two stories from my side with what you were saying with Honor. A friend of mine, I noticed one day she has one of these Honor phones, and I was like asking, like, hey, is this any good? And she said, actually, I needed a new phone, so I went to the shop and I asked for a Huawei phone, which is typically cheap. But the salesperson at the shop, he said something along the lines, "Hey, by the way, like if you want a Huawei, no problem, but just so you know, it doesn't have this Google App Store, it doesn't have Google Play. So as a result, you won't be able to have, I don't know, Revolut. In Romania, if you don't have Revolut, you're done. Like you don't exist basically." And he said, but there's actually an identical phone which is actually also from Huawei. They're like a bunch of guys from Huawei. They just left with the approval of the management and they started a new company called Honor. And they're making all these devices which are identical, a bit cheaper, and they have Play. So I recommend you to buy the Honor device instead of the Huawei,
Which is
which has
just
the
a
same
shell
hardware.
around the same Huawei thing
Yeah,
you're running from.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. And it runs everything you need. I think she initially wanted to get an iPhone, and the guy in the shop said like, "Look, I can sell you an iPhone, but basically this thing is probably just as good or maybe a bit better
Well, what's the
hardware
cost?
wise,
Give
and
me a
three times
comparative number
cheaper.
so I can give
Three
me a cost
times
number so
cheaper.
I can compare
Three
it to what
times
an iPhone
cheaper.
is. I see.
It
3 times
is 3
cheaper.
times cheaper. Yeah.
So 300, 400 bucks for
500 for
500.
something that matches the 1500 iPhone, I guess. This is what she got. Of course, it has like
Interesting.
pop-ups, it has like advertisements that appear out of nowhere on your screen, which is to be expected, I guess. But she was happy. And I
Interesting.
saw another friend of mine also with the Honor phone, and I was like, "Hey, is this like any good?" He said, "Like, wow, the camera is amazing." I said, "But what about privacy?" He said, "No, so far no problems." But who,
So far, no problem.
who
It's
knows?
a great line.
So far, no problems.
Not that we know of. We have not heard
Yeah.
anything. It's
Speaking of problems, the law enforcement caused problems for two of these Australian guys, 21 and 23-year-old guys, alleged part of TeamPCP. Brian Krebs has a really, really detailed story on some of the OPSEC mistakes that were made and how they were able to track these guys and get to the end of the arrests. I bring this up because like success stories are important, and we've been talking about this. TeamPCP guys were the guys behind the Shai Hulud NPM worm thing, right, Costin? Am I remembering it right?
They're like the guys behind. In my opinion, these are one of the most destructive, damaging cyber criminal groups that we have or had at the moment. Right there, together with Scatter Spider, and they're kind of different from pretty much all the other cyber criminal groups in the sense that they're not like the typical Russian cyber criminals ransomware, but these were, I think, very very vicious hackers who kind of leverage the extent of Western technology with very little fear of getting caught, which in my opinion is dumb. It's kind of stupid, right? And Team PCP has been bragging about it. Unlike Russian cyber criminals who are typically very silent, like very close communities, Team PCP, they are like bragging pretty much everywhere, like on X. I think at some point they even had like verified accounts on different social media platforms, which is a bit crazy.
I mean,
And
it's
by the way,
quite possible they were on PCP, right? Like from reading some of the stuff Brian
what is
Krebs was
PCP,
writing.
by the way?
It's a kind of drug, like a street drug.
Educate us. The street drug.
I I don't know that I have much more to give you, but it's a pretty hardcore drug. Like when you hear about somebody on
Jesus.
PCP, you're like, this is. I'm just saying because like some of the reporting was about like the drug use and whatever with these guys. And you're like, to what extent is this a nod to actual PCP use?
All right, all right. So, at least in my opinion, good riddance. But I mean, let's see if this was the whole of it, because
Right.
as
Do
we
you think
probably
this
know with
slows
these
down those
groups,
kinds of, yeah, because these were those self-propagating worms that we saw targeting developers, like really hardcore shit they were doing, what, a month ago, 2 months
devastating,
ago?
devastating. They've been like going on and on and on, and nobody has any kind of clue as to how many credentials were exfiltrated and just basically sitting in their databases, because at some point, remember, they announced that they have too many credentials and they can't leverage everything by themselves. So they were partnering with other cyber criminal organizations to leverage all that stolen information. So it was like one of the most devastating, damaging groups, cyber criminal groups out there. In my opinion, this is a kind of big success. Although I kind of worry a bit that it's just two guys in Australia. What about the other guys?
Yeah, there's got to be another half a dozen at the very least, right? I mean, this was I share your sentiment. Good riddance. Hopefully the charges hold and we're able to. I mean, we started this podcast up. I remember one of the very, very first Juanito rants was about cybersecurity vendors glorifying these scattered spider assholes and these kinds of mercenary groups who live among us. They live among us. They benefit from everything we do, and then they just turn their fucking sociopathic tendencies on us. So I have very little sympathy.
Agree with you.
All right,
Red
my
bean
friends, I
paste.
think that's out. We're running out the show. I know you guys can nerd
Ooh.
out on hardware, Chinese hardware forever. Do we have a UFO episode? Segment.
You caught me. You caught
UFO
me
segment or cybersecurity or cryptocurrency segment?
Wait, I'm gonna get to Magic Money in a second. Anything new on the
Magic Money?
UFO front?
Not really.
No.
I don't think I've
guys
heard
are
anything
slowing
new,
down.
but I may
Terrible.
be
Fuck, man.
I may be wrong here. Maybe there's stuff happening and I just don't know about it. I don't know.
Every time we talk, you tell us that next week they're gonna release some like
coming,
next
it's
week,
coming.
guys. Next
Like,
week we
okay,
will
so
get
look,
proof.
what everyone is
Next
saying.
week.
So like these are facts, you know, I'm not speculating. These are facts. In Trump has the speech written. Like the speech is on his desk. And you know, later there's no speech, there's no desk. Like literally I'm reading the speech and so on. But like the rumor is Trump has the speech written, it's already ready, they're just waiting for approval to do all this
From the
thingy. But
aliens.
at the moment, yeah, it's bad timing. Like, what about the Strait of Americas? What about, yeah,
Lake
all these
America?
Lake America?
We don't have a strait yet. We have a lake and we have a gulf.
We
Okay.
have a
Mini
He
Gulf
ocean.
said
War.
we're doing an ocean soon. So
An
watch
ocean.
it. Pacific.
Which one?
Looking at you.
What's the poly
I don't
market
know
on
yet.
whether it's the Atlantic or the Pacific? There's got to be a poly
You know
market
this shit
betting market
exists.
going.
You know there's money on this.
It's
You
gonna
know
be
it.
obviously the Atlantic. I guess it'll be the Atlantic, and then Greenland will be called Green America or the likes.
Oh.
In
No, we're
all
not
seriousness,
doing that.
Magic Money took a nice jump for you guys that own Bitcoin over the last week. Any new news on the Magic Money front?
There's like a lot of news. To be honest, I don't keep up with that too much. I saw there was it's like why is it spiking? It's because Trump made a big speech with all the CEOs of the Magic Money companies behind him, obviously explaining how bad Sleepy Joe was to this, and we're just gonna get rid of all that. Now it's like the golden age of Magic Money, like the magic golden money, and everything will be great and America will be a leader. We can't allow our adversaries in China to beat us in magic money, so our magic money will
Or
be better
AI.
than their magic monies. And the speech was good. Like I saw the speech. Actually, it was a very good speech. That's the reality.
Who the fuck? Who the
And
fuck has GPUs right now and is dedicating them to
to
magic
magic,
money bullshit instead of
it,
selling tokens?
a
Like, are you
lot
fucking
of
kidding
people,
me?
a lot of
Why?
people, a lot
Why?
of people. Yeah. Because
That's
yeah,
insane.
there's an opportunity everywhere. I think opportunity is everywhere. And some people believe in one thing, some people believe in God, some people believe in Allah, and some people believe in Buddha. I don't know. Some people believe in magic money and Michael
Effective
Saylor.
nepotism.
Freedom.
Michael Saylor is one of those guys, you know, who has a certain followers. And that speech is actually the reason behind the recent increase of magic money, and pretty much everything is kind of
Why
growing.
would he
And
do the
until we
magic
could
money speech and not the UFO speech, bro? Come on, man. Like,
exactly, yeah, very
Exactly.
disappointing.
It is 2:30 a.m. in Tokyo, Juanito. Close the show with some quick shout-outs.
bro, I mean, shout out to Alex Perez Palma, who's
Who?
been a really good friend. Alex from
Perez
formerly Workday,
Palma.
now Apple, just an excellent researcher and a very good friend who was among the many people who've just been shouting me down to actually take a trip on this vacation, which has been great. I've done nothing people have told me to do, but I am having a great time. And hopefully more
Did you
excuses to
find
come
rice
back
flour
to.
pancakes? Did you find rice flour pancake mix?
Don't worry, I got you guys.
Oh,
Dude,
my
I've got a
hero.
second. I brought like an empty extra suitcase just to shove full of shit here.
Shout out
But
to
I'm like,
Moji.
I'm buying
Muji.
every toy I wanted as a kid and couldn't get. And like,
Awesome.
I'm doing like retro video games. I got GoldenEye, Zelda Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, all in like the original Japanese, like N64 shit. I'm just going
Awesome,
wild on
awesome.
like stupid shit. But in any case, shout out to our friends and also. Dude, the Japanese conference scene seems to be getting interesting. I'm not here for any of that, but like, you've always had your Code Blue, but now there's an Offensive Con Tokyo, which sounds pretty interesting to me. And
All
hopefully
right,
more
well,
reasons to come back to Japan, man.
we should do an in-person episode, the three of us from Tokyo,
Bro,
before
let's
the
do
end
it.
of this year. Let's plan it properly. You
I
hurry
want to
back
meet
safely. We
the.
got a LABScon to finish planning and delivering. I mean,
Yes.
this is my quick shout out. We mentioned the TeamPCP guys. Austin Larson from Google is going to do a talk there on the behind the scenes things that those guys did at Google to track it, and not a pimping of the agenda. I don't know why, but I'm so excited about the LABScon agenda this year.
FOMO-con.
Like,
FOMO-con.
no, but I mean, you look at it from top to bottom, day one, all through the second day. It's just some fascinating, amazing behind the scenes stories, never before seen research type things. So I'm excited about that. Costin, what do you have for us?
Well, shout outs to our good friends in Japan. Shout outs to our friend Suguru Ishimaru-san. Hello. And to
Misha-san, the great
Sato-san.
Misha-san.
Sato-sama. Sato-sama is an amazing person. At some point, there was an unofficial, I don't know how to call it, competition between Sato-sama and myself at who was registering sinkholing more domains. So Sato-sama was running his own sinkhole, I was running my sinkhole, and we were sinkholing the shit out of CNCs. Yeah. And I didn't know who he was, and he didn't know who I was. But everyone could see that sometimes, as a domain for some APT expired, it was like one or the other grabbing the domain, and they're like, "Who is that? Who is that?" I remember when I met him, like one day, "Oh, that was you. That was you. Yeah, that was me." And at some point, I kind of stopped doing the sinkholing, but he is like absolutely the master of all sinkholing. And
shout
so
out to our guys,
them.
Misha-san as well.
Of course, shout outs to our good friend Misha-san, who still rocks. Music composer, German guy living in Japan for his entire life, is now, I think, more Japanese than the Japanese.
Yes.
Speaking now German with a Japanese accent, and he was absolutely awesome.
All right, guys, that's our show for the week. We'll catch you next week.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.